This is Orlando. This is where we believe in magic and fantasies and wishing upon stars and the power of the imagination. This is where we dream, where we think smarter and play harder. So if you think you know all there is to know about Orlando, you're in for a big surprise. Because until you join our community and see all the reasons we're amazing, you don't know the half of it.
I go to Princeton University, majoring in psychology.
I go to Harvard and I'm majoring in economics.
I'm going to Duke and I'm majoring in psychology and global health.
I'm going to Johns Hopkins and I'm majoring in chemistry.
Our advantage, great teachers and programs at Orange County Public Schools. See what's possible for you.
There are magnet programs, advanced placement and honors classes, and guidance counselors who help us choose the right courses.
You can even earn college credit while in high school.
OCPS has programs for every type of learner.
Orange County Public Schools, leading students to success.
All right, good evening, everybody, and happy holidays. Welcome to the Orange County School Board, and we're so pleased to see all of y'all out here in the audience tonight. We love it when we get a wonderful public participation and when we get to celebrate our successes as well, which we're going to lead off the meeting with tonight. Tonight we have invited a state champion award winner to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and our moment of silence. I'm going to brag on her in a moment, but first let me invite up to the podium Isabella English from Winter Park High School. Please join us at the podium.
Will you please stand and bow your heads for a moment of silence? Thank you. And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may now be seated.
Oh, don't go anywhere, Isabella. We're going to brag on you for a moment. Stay up there so we can all look at you while I brag on you. Last year, last month, I should say, Isabella became, and this is no small accomplishment in a state as large and renowned for swimming as Florida is, she became the state champion in the 100 breaststroke. Congratulations, Isabella.
Thank you.
And what's especially exciting is I see another state championship in her future because Isabella is only a junior at Winter Park High School. Yeah. So she has one more year of high school swimming, and we want to thank you, Isabella, for making us look so good, and what a tremendous accomplishment. I'm just curious, what was your time, and who was your toughest competition?
My time was 103.3. Going into the meet, I was seated second because I got second at regionals, which I think getting second at regionals was what really pushed me to work hard the last week and a half till states. And when I got to states, I thought my biggest competitor was going to be Taylor, the one that beat me at regionals. But a girl that was seated, I think I don't know what she was seated, sixth or something, or maybe even third, but I wasn't expecting it. In prelim, she beat me by 0.0 something. So I was freaking out a little bit for finals, but I trusted my training when I went to finals, and I was ready to race, and it was a close race, but it was a lot of fun.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm putting on my ESPN sportscaster hat. And what do you want to study when you're in college?
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, an observation I have, I'm a Gator, and we had a pretty darn good swimming program when I was there many decades ago. Actually, we're a national champion. In fact, one year, I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm getting totally off tangent, but you get a Gators talking about Florida, and you can't shut us up. One year, if we had been a country, I think we would have had the 12th highest medal count in the world in that Summer Olympics, and that was almost all swimmers. So hopefully you'll become a Gator. But it's been my observation that the best students, because of the discipline it takes your chosen sport, tend to be the best students as well. The best swimmers tend to be the best students. So when I ask you what you want to be, I wouldn't be surprised if one day we have a doctor in front of your name or a professor or something of that nature. Are your parents here tonight? Can we have them stand and let us recognize them as well, because they should be very, very proud of you. And yes, you have me to blame for medical school tuition if that ever comes to pass. Isabella, thank you again for coming tonight.
Thank
We're very
you.
proud of you. All right, tonight we have another very special recognition, and this is sort of hard for me because they're a friendly rival, but they are a rival. I'm a Boone Brave parent, but I get to recognize one of the most dominant teams in the state of Florida tonight, the Winter Park High School girls cross-country team, which won their second consecutive 4A state championship. Can I have the members of the girls cross-country team please stand? Let us recognize you. And as I call your name, I'd like you all to do your best Miss America contestant pageant wave, turn around and wave at the crowd. And so we have with us tonight Alexandria Baba, Jennifer Coddington, Rafaela Gibbons, Hannah Herndon, Elizabeth Jenkins, Catherine, but I know she goes by Katie Kuhn, Madison Larrabee, Emily Nix, Melanie White, and their coaches, head coach Kristen McWilliams, assistant coach Tracy Nolan Bruce, and assistant coach Kathy Anguish. Coach Anguish here? And Coach McWilliams, you get the Miss America prize for the best wave. I also want to brag a little bit on Coach McWilliams. She was selected as Florida's top girls cross-country coach by the Florida Dairy Farmers Association. It's an honor that was well-deserved, Coach. And ladies, I know the board would like to shake your hands. And Miss English, where does Isabella go? We'd like to shake your hand as well. And before I have them all file up here and have us shake your hands, I do want to brag on these girls a little bit more from Winter Park High School. I'm a father of a Boone cross-country runner, and I went to a bunch of their meets, and you have never seen such dominance as you see in the Winter Park girls. In fact, when you get to districts and regionals, you are praying at most schools that you get one or two girls in the top 10 or the top 15, and then you see Winter Park come across first, second, fourth, sixth, seventh, eighth. It's nothing short of amazing what you've done, Coach McWilliams. I'm going to single out one of your members because she is a state champion, Rafi Gibbons. Rafi, raise your hand. She is a remarkable runner, and not only that, but from everybody. I know a lot of Winter Park parents and a lot of Winter Park students because it's sort of my circle. She's a wonderful young woman, as all these women. I know a lot about many of you. Katie Kuhn, I've heard tons of things about you because I'm friends with your dad and friends with a bunch of Winter Park parents. Emily Nix, I keep hearing about you as well from a lot of my mutual friends. So I think the thing we're proudest of, Coach McWilliams, is it's my understanding that all these girls, and Miss English, Isabella, this applies to you as well, is that they're exemplary students and exemplary role models at Winter Park High School. So your parents should be very proud. And before we shake your hands, I'd like to ask if any of the parents of the Winter Park Cross Country team could also rise. Girls, sit down just for a moment so we can recognize your parents as well for raising such fine young women. And at this time, let us pause for a moment. We'd like to shake your hand, ladies. All right, we have another a district recognition tonight that our entire district is extremely proud of and that we can celebrate. And with that, we have Miss Melody Griffin with us tonight, and Miss Griffin is the State Coordinator for Action for Healthy Kids. Welcome, Miss Griffin. I'm going to ask her to step up to the podium for a moment, and she has a very special recognition and award. Ms. Griffin, is Dr. Sharon going to come up next, or would you like him to join you at the podium at that time? Dr. Sharon, welcome. Dr. Sharon, we all know from coming before us a number of times, he is the Orange County Department of Health Director or Manager. I know I got the title wrong, Dr. Sharon, but Dr. Sharon, welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chairman Sublette. It's an honor on behalf of the Florida Department of Health in Orange County to be a part of this recognition. And the Department of Health and the Orange County Public Schools, the Winter Park Health Foundation, and the community partnerships are proud to accept the Golden Award once again for the Orange County Public Schools and the partnership for the Health Award, the Community Health Award for Health. And here it is, the Healthy School District Award.
Yeah.
So Melody, would you like to present
Wonderful.
this?
Yes, and as Dr. Sharon said, this is really all about community partnerships. So there are 8 areas that we look at, and Orange County is just known throughout the state for being a leader in health and wellness. And you guys did an amazingly well job on district infrastructure, health education, health services, nutrition services and education, counseling, psychological and social services, healthy school environment, employee wellness, and family and community involvement. And I just can't say enough about how often I'm out, whether it's in our local Central Florida area or across the state, and it never fails that Orange County Public Schools is brought up again and again as a leader in health and wellness. And we know that healthy students help create academic excellence. So congratulations on receiving the Gold Root Award for the 2nd time. And this is the 3rd time you've received an award in general. You went from silver to gold. So we're excited to see your progress and hope you continue it. Thank you. Yes. And I'm sorry I failed to mention that there is an amazing team, wonderfully named the Toolies, that work on this tool that give many hours to ensuring that you get the recognition that you need. So if you would like to stand and be recognized, can't do it without you.
Well, Ms. Griffin, thank you. This award is so very, very important to our district because, and I feel like it's so apropos that we have the Winter Park cross-country team here and Isabella here as well tonight from the swim team, because they are paradigms of a healthy lifestyle. And as a father of a female athlete myself, I think there's nothing more refreshing to see a young, healthy woman and a young, healthy man in our high school. So thank you all again for being great role models. We have a number of individuals here from OCPS who have put a lot of effort into ensuring that we achieve that distinction. I'd like to recognize them. They include our Department of Environmental Services. Could they stand, each representative from each Department of Environmental? Nobody here tonight? Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go. And Linda, you and your team from Food and Nutrition Services, if you could stand, please. And Curriculum and Instruction, Dr. Jara, you and your team. Yeah. And Health and Wellness. Anybody here from Health and Wellness? How about from ESC Services, Exceptional Student Education Services? Linda, welcome. Dr. Cartwright, thank you. And from our Visual and Performing Arts, is Mr. Cartwright here? Or not Mr. Cartwright, Mr. Evans here? Okay. Thank you all very, very much for all your work on behalf of Orange County Public Schools.
Thank you.
Laura Gilbert, I'm sorry. Laura, I knew I missed one. Laura Gilbert, stand from Food and Nutrition Services. Did she already stand? Okay. And for the uninitiated, the reason that we recognize all those departments, as Ms. Griffin can attest and Dr. Sharon can attest, is having a healthy school district is everything from the meals we serve in our cafeterias, where we have made great strides in reducing our calorie counts, reducing our carbohydrate counts, reducing our sugar counts, and really providing healthier fare for our students, to curriculum in our classrooms to make sure our students know how to live a healthy lifestyle, to making sure all of our students are provided for, including our ESC students, that they sometimes who have challenging physical difficulties to overcome or mental or emotional difficulties know how to live a healthy lifestyle as well, to the environment within our schools. So that's why we recognized all those departments. And thank you, Ms. Griffin and Dr. Sharon, for your work on our behalf. Thank you. And I'm told, I'm looking at the boss, Sherry Babinski. Did you want us to do? Okay. We're going to do it very quickly, board members, a very quick photo, because we've got a lot of folks we're waiting. We have a lengthy agenda, so a very quick photo. All right, at this time, I think what we'll do is we have a strategic plan update next on our unitary status report. That's something that's of great import to this board, and that we have a lot of attention to here at the board table. But I think it's going to be like watching paint dry for a lot of y'all, and you do have school tomorrow. So we're going to pause for a moment and let our students, if you'd like, head home, and their parents. Thank you all for coming down tonight. Ms. Griffin, thank you as well for coming down. Coach, thank you for coming. Sorry, guys, we find it fascinating, but maybe not as much as others.
Like paint dry.
Okay, Ron. All right, so at this time, let me turn it over to Dr. Jenkins for our strategic plan update.
Thank you, Chairman. As you all know, this district was declared unitary by the court system, so we are not under any ratios or mandatory numbers when it comes to school staffing. However, in our unitary status agreement, the district and this board committed to monitoring all of our data in several areas in that unitary status agreement. One of them, and so we present to the board updates on each section, and then the final unitary status update at the end of the year. And our unitary status oversight committee gets the same information. Tonight we will have the update from the human resources portion. I'd like to stress again, we are not under court order or ratio requirements. We are simply updating the board as a commitment to this community that we took seriously, that we need to have a diverse workforce. With that, we are ready to begin.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, school board members, and Superintendent Jenkins. This evening, I'm here to provide an update on the settlement agreement and the commitment of Orange County Public Schools to employ a staff that reflects a broad diversity of backgrounds and experiences that characterize our nation. In 2010, School Board Policy GCE was adopted, and tonight I'll be providing data that highlights our most recent efforts to recruit and hire a diverse workforce. A few important items to note as we go through the presentation. The report highlights gender, race, and ethnic data within the district, including our learning communities, transportation services, alternative education, exceptional education, vocational and adult education, our 10 and 12-month district staff, new hires to the district, and the assistant principal and principal pools. It's also important to note that this year we consolidated custodial services under the district. As a result, we moved 903 custodians out of the learning communities and other work locations, and this has certainly had an impact on some of our numbers. And finally, the growth in hiring activity the district has experienced over the last 2 years. Since the 2012-13 school year, we've experienced a 67% increase in all hiring activity. There are also several factors to consider when determining how and who we hire as a district. Vacancy rates, candidate eligibility, which includes such things as our hiring qualifications like instructional certifications, other minimum requirements for our positions, and our extensive security and previous work history screenings, combined with candidate interest, are all factors that make up the availability of our candidate pool. So as we begin with gender highlights for 2015, all learning communities had an almost 3% increase in the number of their male instructional staff over the last year. Additionally, alternative ed, exceptional education, and vocational and adult education also all had an increase in the number of the males within its instructional staff. When we look at gender compared with our baseline comparisons, our male instructional staff has actually increased by over 16% since the 2009-10 baseline year. And alternative education, exceptional education, and vocational and adult education has also increased the percentages of male instructional staff since our 2009-10 baseline year. 2015 racial highlights include exceptional education increased the overall percentage of Black employees on staff by almost 2.5%. Black employees within our professional instructional staff increased by 3.2 percentage points, and each of our 5 learning communities had an increase in the overall percentage of Black new hires over the past year. Additionally, exceptional ed had a 23.7 percentage point increase for Black new hires. Vocational ed had an almost 8 percentage point increase for Black new hires. And the principal pool over the last 2 years has shown a growth of over 5 percentage points. When we compare Black against our baseline comparisons, all areas within the report show a percentage increase for Black employees. Black new hires actually had a 6.4 percentage point increase since the 2010 baseline year. And transportation services increased their percentage of Black employees on staff by almost 8%, or 8 percentage points. For ethnicity highlights for 2015, combined, the learning communities had a 4.5% increase in Hispanic and Latino instructional staff. Alternative ed, exceptional ed, and vocational and adult education combined had a 12.5% increase in the number of Hispanic and Latinos within their instructional staff over the past year. The learning communities had a 3%, an almost 3% increase in the number of Hispanic and Latino administrators over the past year, and transportation services actually doubled the number of Hispanic and Latino administrators for the 2015 year. Additionally, non-school-based administrative staff had an overall 2.2 percentage point increase. Hispanic and Latino new hires had an overall percentage point increase of 4.2 over the last year, while the West Learning community actually showed a 6.4 percentage point increase in Hispanic and Latino new hires. And finally, Hispanic and Latino candidates for our principal pool has grown by almost 3% over the last year. When we compare Hispanic and Latino against our baseline years, while we notice a slight decrease in the overall percentage of Hispanic and Latinos at our learning communities, which was attributed to the consolidation of custodial services and moving those employees out of the learning communities under the district office, we actually noticed, we actually had an increase of almost 80% in Hispanic new hires since our baseline year of 2010 and 11. Likewise, we had a slight decrease in the assistant principal pool for Hispanic and Latino candidates. The principal pool, though, grew by almost 4 percentage points over the past year. So as we move forward, we'll continue to recruit and hire males within all areas of the district, with a particular focus on our learning community staff, within exceptional education administrative staff, and within our assistant principal and principal pools. As we look at our continued focus for race, we'll continue to recruit and hire blacks in all areas within the district, with a particular focus on our East and Southeast learning communities, within new hires for alternative education, and within our assistant principal pool. And finally, as we look at ethnicity, we'll have a continued focus to recruit and hire Hispanic and Latinos within all areas of the district, with a particular focus on our North and West learning communities, within exceptional education, their administrative and instructional staff, new hires within the North learning community and vocational and adult education, and our assistant principal pool. And in conclusion, you can find this report after tonight's presentation on OCPS.net. You can click on the School Board tab. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see the unitary status section, and then this report will be uploaded tomorrow to that page. And I did want to make a note that it is important to remember that OCPS is in compliance with our unitary status. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the superintendent for any questions or discussion.
That last point certainly is the most important, that we remain in compliance with our agreement for unitary status, and we'll continue to make these reports both for the board's sake and for the community. Certainly happy to answer any questions you might have at this time, Chairman.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Board members, questions, comments? Yeah, I have one, and this board knows it's an area of continuing emphasis of mine. And Mr. Pilgrim, I know you're new in this position, but you've been with us a long time. But I just want to cheer you on, but encourage you, and Dr. Jenkins, us to do better when it comes to our AP pool for Latinos and Hispanics. It's not growing, to be very candid with you, fast enough, in my estimation at all, not even remotely fast enough. I think that we've made strides in growing the percentage of our Latino Hispanic instructional staff, and that number was refreshing. But when I talk to the Latino Hispanic community, which is frequent, and you know, we all know up here, a lot of folks don't realize actually the largest segment of our student population in Orange County Public Schools are Latino students. So it's a point of real frustration to many leaders in that community that we don't have more Latino Hispanic principals and assistant principals. So I just would encourage us to redouble our efforts to find qualified, talented instructors, because I think they're in our system. And even if we have to go out and recruit them into our AP pool, I think it's something that we very much need to do. So thank you. Board members, other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Pilgrim.
Thank you.
All right. So let me make a couple of preliminary announcements. We have a number of items on the agenda tonight that are of great interest to the community. So if you are here to testify on any issue on our agenda, please obtain a yellow speaker form that looks like this. Most of you already have. You can obtain this form from Ms. McGill, who is the lady at the far left-hand side of the dais. At the time that agenda item comes up, I will recognize you to speak. You will come to the lectern, and you will begin, if you would please, by stating your name and your address for the record. The address is a legal requirement. A lot of folks ask why we require that, but we require that because the law requires us to do that. After your 3 minutes is up, at that time you may get questions from the board, although most often there are not any questions from the board. I will say I don't think this is going to be an issue tonight, but let me go over some, for lack of a better term, ground rules I go over whenever we have any issues that may be somewhat controversial before us. It is board policy that we will end the meeting at 10 p.m. regardless of whether we have concluded the matters before us. We can stretch that. I have the discretion to stretch that as a chair to 10:30, but if it's not concluded by 10:30, I have no legal authority to extend it after 10:30. We have a code of civility. I demand, and the board demands, that every member of this board treat speakers with respect. We would just ask that it be a two-way street and that you keep it professional and your comments confined to the issues before the board and not make them personal. Don't take that too much to heart. I say that every time we have anything even remotely controversial. I don't think that's going to happen tonight, but it's just a cautionary note. I would also say this is a government proceeding, and it's a formal proceeding, that if you have signed up to speak, you are here to give testimony. I used to serve in the legislature, and I'm always sort of struck by the fact that people think sometimes it seems that a school board is different than testifying before the legislature, Congress, or the county commission, or the city council. It is not. It's the same, so please keep that in mind. It's your opportunity to take those 3 minutes to provide your testimony on the issues of concern to you. And that's sort of a polite way of saying it's not a discussion and it's not a debate. It's your opportunity to testify in the literal sense of that word. We used to not allow clapping. I never liked that because we have adults testifying before us, and I don't think that's a very adult thing. So we will allow clapping. I don't think it's a very adult thing to not allow clapping. So we do allow clapping. I would just ask you all that you confine it to clapping, no hooping and hollering. It's not a pep rally. And please, no booing if you don't like something that you hear. Just clap when you like it, and if you feel compelled to do something to indicate what you don't like, then give the old Roman Empire thumbs down to silently indicate your disapproval of what you're hearing. So that's pretty much it for the ground rules at this time. Let me see if we have any changes to our agenda, Dr. Jenkins.
We have 2 changes. Item 1404 is withdrawn. That is request approval of amendments to Memorandum of Understanding between the Town of Eatonville and the School Board of Orange County pursuant to the Second Amendment to Agreement for Sale and Purchase as adopted by the School Board on June 23, 2015. Withdrawn to be brought back at a later time. Additionally, from Agenda Item 1401, we are moving employee initials LW, classified employee initials LW to 1601. Non-consent.
All right, I find cause to amend the agenda as suggested by the superintendent. Is there any objection to that? Seeing none, all those in the favor of can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? I'm sorry, the consent agenda, or the agenda. It's been moved by Ms. Gould and seconded by Vice Chair Robinson. Is there any debate or discussion of that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to adopt the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Show the agenda adopted. Dr. Jenkins, it's my understanding that we have no newly appointed administrators to recognize now, or do we, before I get ahead of myself? We do. Okay. So let's do that before we get into item 3.01, which are the rezonings.
I show 1 administrator. I'm looking. Jody Blevins, instructional support teacher from Ocoee High School, will be assistant principal at Edgewater High School.
Thank you, Barbara Jenkins, Dr. Jenkins, and Dr. Jara and the board for this wonderful opportunity. I also want to thank my husband, Brian, and my 2 sons, Aaron and Tyler. And I also see Miss Boyd back there. Thank you so much for all your help in the past couple of years through discipline. And of course, Howard Hepburn, my new principal. So thank you.
Mrs. Robinson.
Welcome, Ms. Blevins. You're coming to a fun place. Like you said earlier, you've known Mr. Hepburn for years, and y'all are going to work really well together, and I'm excited about that. And I'm excited to get to know you better because I spent a lot of time there since my children attend there and my mentees attend there. So anyway, congratulations. I understand you start in the morning. So if she's our last one, can we release him?
We can.
Congratulations.
Before we do, Aaron and Tyler, you two have been absolutely wonderful. Stand up and take a bow for us. Ms. Levin, congratulations on your appointment and on your beautiful children.
You're so cute.
All right, we are now into the business part of our meeting. We are on agenda item 3.01, which is to request approval of the rezoning for the new K-8 schools and then a targeted Lakeshore Drive rezoning. So, Dr. Jenkins, would it be your pleasure to take up the new K-8 school rezonings first and then the targeted one next?
That is the order that they were listed, if that's okay with the board. Proceed, Dr. McGowan.
Good evening. At this time, I'd like to introduce Stacy Neal from Student Enrollment. She'll be presenting part of our program this evening. We are here to present the proposed rezoning option for 2 new K-8 schools and 1 PS-8 within our central core of Orlando, and for 1 targeted rezoning. For our audience, I'd like to remind that we have a school board policy for rezoning, JCA, and it is a 12-step process. The first 5 steps are the due diligence that we do prior to presenting any information to our public. Step 6 is our community meeting, our community meetings. Step 7 is an update for our superintendent. Step 8 and 9 are to advertise and to hold the rural development workshop. And step 10 is to advertise and hold the public hearing, which is where we are this evening. Steps 11 and 12 are due diligence on storage of the rezoning notebook. The timeline for this rezoning, your turn, is as you see on your screen. In September 21 and 24 and October 12, we held community meetings. October 5, we met with the superintendent. October 20th and November 12th, we had rural development workshops. And tonight, we're at the public hearing. We are rezoning for 3 new schools, 131 PS8 SW5, which is located at the intersection of Livingston and Paramore, 133 K8 N6, which will be at the original Audubon Park Elementary School site, and 205 K8 SW6, which will be at the current Lake Como Elementary site. These numbers are here so that we refer to the school each time in the same way. The first number is a real estate property number. The second part is the PS or the K8, it's the type of school, K8. The next is the learning community. We either have the north or southwest. And our last number represents the school board member district, which would be 5 or 6 at this time. Our timeline for opening our new buildings in 2017, both 131 PS8 SW5 and 133 K8 N6 will open in their brand new buildings. In 2018, 205 K8 SW56 will open in its new building. Because we are for part of this, our children could be moving from an existing school to an existing school, or our 5th or 8th graders, some of them, if their parents would like, could be eligible for grandfather transfer. We will work with individual families at their questions and help them through our process. At this time, Ms. Neal is going to walk us through our proposed rezoning maps. Stacy?
Good evening. First, I want to start with the advertised option. Let me orient you to the map. The red lines are the current elementary zone lines. We will begin by looking at the elementary map, then the middle school. We will start at the PS8. 131 PS8 SW5, located at Livingston and Paramore. This school will include students from Princeton, Fern Creek, Orange Center, Blankner, Lake Como, Dover Shores, Cayley, and Grand Avenue at the elementary level. The Blankner zone, which is the next slide here, has some minor changes on the borderline. .205 K8 SW6, located at the Lake Como site, and this school will include students from Blankner, Cayley, Dover Shores, Lake Como, Hillcrest, and Fern Creek. The next slide shows some minor changes between Dover Shores and Lake George. .133 K8 N6, located at the original Audubon Park site, will include students from Fern Creek, Audubon Park, Killarney, and Brookshire. In this next slide, the pink is the proposed Princeton zone, which includes Princeton and part of Fern Creek. There is a minor change between Lake Silver and Killarney. There is a change of students east of 1792, and those students will move from Killarney to Lakemont. Now, the advertised option for middle schools. The current middle school zones are in green, and the shaded areas represent the new boundaries. For 131 PS 8 SW5, located at Livingston and Paramore, Howard and Memorial Middle Schools. 205 K8 SW6, located at the Lake Como site, Howard and Conway Middle Schools. 133 K8N6, located at the original Audubon Park site, includes Lee, Howard, Glen Ridge, and Maitland Middle Schools. This is a map of the feeder patterns before and after. This is a phased rezoning, and as we work towards our new schools, this is a timeline for the student movement. 2016 starts with Lake Como students moving to Cayley. 2017, additional student movement from affected schools will be involved. 2018, our new facility will open, and once again, additional student movement. Now here are we will present the data tables for the options. The first column represents the school name. For example, the first one is, we'll do Audubon Park Elementary School. It shows the program permanent capacity of 688. The next column is enrollment as of September 15, 2015. That's the number at the top. The middle represents the percentage of racial demographics, white, black, other. The third line is the percentage of ethnic students, non-Hispanic and Hispanic. The third column are the number of students residing in the zone currently. The fourth one is the proposed students that will reside, or the racial demographics of the students that will reside in the area. So the first one is percentage of racial demographics, white, black, or other. The third line is percentage of non-ethnicity, non-Hispanic, Hispanic students. Fifth column, your free and reduced meals, current at the top, proposed. The next column is your English language learners, current and proposed. The final column are your exceptional students, current and proposed. So I'll give you a moment to look over the data tables. The middle school data table. And we would like to just state, reiterate, we will work with individual families as we progress through each phase of the rezone.
And since our last meeting with our rural development workshop, we have received additional input. We have received one on our online survey that supports the advertised option. We have 12 who oppose the advertised option, and that includes 7 families in the Orwin Manor neighborhood who wish to be part of the K-8 at the original Audubon Park site. You have received a copy of all the petition emails and online survey over time, and you've also received the summary of all the input that we received. Thank you. Dr. Jenkins?
All right, thank you, Dr. McGowan. Board members, we have one speaker on this proposed rezoning, Mr. Michael Renrich. Renrich? I hope I pronounced your last name right, sir. Renrick, I'm sorry. I'm notorious for that. And if you could start, Mr. Renrick, with your address, please, for the record.
I live at 865 Nottingham Street. And in addition to the letter that I think you have, or were given, I have the signatures of about 36 neighbors. I expect that list to grow rapidly. This was a 100% success rate. We asked 36 people, we got 36 signatures. Our little part of Orwin Manor is to the west of 1792 and to the south of Orange Avenue. And our issue is not as much about K-8 versus Princeton. It's about being cut off from our neighbors. This is a small area of only 8 streets, about 180 lots. And this is not an official number, but just talking to neighbors, we have about 20 elementary school age families in this little neighborhood. I'm one of them. I've got 2 daughters, 6 and 8 years old. Our neighborhood is tied to the east, to Beverly Shores, Rose Isle, Merritt Park, and it's tied to the north, to the other side of Orwin Manor, the Winter Park side of Orwin Manor. These 3 communities cross 1792 and Orange Avenue on dog walks, stroller walks with kids, our friends and family networks, and geographically we're very connected. To the south, we have Florida Hospital and Lock Haven Park, and to the west, we have Orange Avenue and then I-4, and we really, unfortunately, don't have relationships that way. We were all very excited about the Option 2 map that had us with our neighbors across on the west side of 1792 and in the K-8. The Option 3 map that we learned about last week because of the Orlando Sentinel article puts us in Princeton. And again, it's not as much about Princeton, but our close neighbors directly to the north, the other part of Orwin Manor, are zoned for Killarney in that map, and our close neighbors to the west are zoned for the K-8. So it takes an already small, somewhat isolated neighborhood and puts us with neighborhoods we don't have any connection with at the moment. So it's really a community-based plea to take another look at the Option 2 map as it pertains to our neighborhood. We're grateful to get either one of these schools, and I appreciate everybody's tireless work on this extremely complicated issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wenrick. Mrs. Robinson.
Mr. Winrick, it's nice to put a face with the name. We've been communicating via email for 2 days. Unfortunately, Mr. Winrick's community, Orwin Manor, on the western side of 1792, none of the families there go to Fern Creek, so I didn't have a way to get in touch with his community. I never heard from anyone about what they thought was a good fit for them one way or the other. And staff said we need numbers at Princeton because Princeton numbers are getting so low. So they thought it would be a good idea to have them. So what I have told Mr. Winrick is that I'm going to ask for your approval of Option 3 tonight. And did you want to hand those out? Oh. Option 3 tonight, and then I will talk with his community and we'll work with student enrollment to see what the numbers really are going to start looking like, and if it would work, maybe we could do a targeted rezoning. But the fact that they did not come to me when these maps went out, I didn't know what they wanted. So, and I guess like they said, they didn't see Option 3 until it was in the newspaper. So anyway, we are in communication, and we are going to keep in communication. But so thank you. So can I go ahead and? Yeah. I just wanted to say that over the last 2 years, this process for the K-8 rezonings have been going on. I've met with multiple schools and neighborhood groups and had conversations with numerous interested parties regarding the opening of these 3 K-8s and the subsequent rezoning that we're all going through right now. As a result of those meetings, I proposed option 3 at the October 20th Rule Development Workshop as a hybrid, and Ms. Cadle and Ms. Cobert, added a few tweaks in option 3 as well. So tonight I ask for your support of option 3 for this K-8 rezoning, and I move that we approve the staff recommendation.
All right, a motion's been made. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
It's been seconded by Ms. Flynn. All right, before I take up that motion, Mrs. Gordon, you've done an awful lot of work on this as well, and this involves your schools, and you've done a great job of shepherding this. Did you want to make any comments? Okay. Mr. Wenrick, where did you go? I know Mrs. Robinson will work with you. She is, along with Mrs. Gordon, have done wonderful jobs working with her community. I will share with you, sir, I've had a number of folks come to me over the last 5 years and lobby me to be drawn into the Princeton Elementary School zone. So I have a feeling you may find that it's a very good fit. It's a very popular school, and it's an extremely good school. And I'm not just saying that to placate you, it truly is. But all that being said, I know Mrs. Robinson will continue to work with you, sir. So thank you. All right, board members, I don't have any other speakers. And before I vote on the motion, which is to adopt option 3, that was the only speaker I had outside of the Lakeshore Drive issue, which we're going to take up next. So anybody else here wanted to speak on option 3 before we vote on it? You did, ma'am? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Howlett. I was wondering where the voice of our future student was coming from. Yeah. Love his socks.
So thank you. And again, I'm a neighbor in Orwin Manor. My name is Myra Monreal. I'm at 1012 Wilkinson Street, Orlando, Florida, 32803, as well as this little guy. So, speaking before board, it's not something I normally do, nor do I normally have this baby in front of me. But as a single working mom, I just want to let you know how important this is to me. And I did do, and my neighbors did, a lot of the surveys online because of the difficulties in kind of coming to a forum like this. But I'm hoping, even though I'm going to pay for it tonight, that this will end up paying off in dividends. And, we can concur. We currently live in Orwin Manor. I was not here when you had original conversations with the neighborhood, but we tried to go through the process. And when we realized that some of the information wasn't shown in the summaries, I think that's why you're getting a flurry of information now to kind of help specify exactly what it is the neighborhood is looking for. And I think we agree and we concur in that this neighborhood is more than just defined by the street. It's not defined by mills. It's defined by the people who live there, where we shop, and the other children that we play with. And we did an unofficial census this weekend, and you're correct. There are 2 kids that go to public schools, but they go to Blankner. They go to Brookshire. And when I asked them, how did you get to go to Blankner? They're like, my dad lives there. So little Olivia uses her dad's address. And then the rest of the children are spread out around 7 private schools, anywhere from Lake Highland to All Saints to Monarch, which are nice, close, walkable schools. So the point there being is, I think for our neighborhood, again, we would like to have an option where the children can walk to school, and we believe that the school over at the Audubon location is more walkable. We don't have to cross Interstate 4. We don't have to cross Orange Avenue, and we don't have to cross Princeton. And both are within the 2-mile walking distance. So we would not be bused, and our children would have to walk across that area. So in short, I think what I want you to say is that, we would like to keep the neighborhood intact. We would like to have an option that includes Orwin Manor in the new K-8. And we would like to give our children, this one in a few years, the option to attend a public school. And, we like the fact that you're giving us opportunities to the private school system, and I think we're done. So thank you very much.
What's his name?
This is Miles.
Miles. You did a good job, Miles.
Just need to fill out a card.
Well, thank you for your testimony, and we'll need you to fill out a card before you leave, ma'am. Mr. Howard might be able to help you get that. And I will say this, I want most of this audience knows this, but by the time a rezoning comes to us, we've been through 2 public workshops and a number of public meetings outside of the formal workshop. So if it seems as if there's a relative paucity of questions up here, it's because by this point we've pretty thoroughly exhausted all the options, and a lot of these folks, for example, in the blue shirts came and testified previously. I also want to say on behalf of the board that, and this is not directed at you at all, Mr. Winrick, or your neighbor, we think it's a wonderful thing that we have people clamoring to get into these K-8s. We really do. We think that's why there has not been more of an issue with this very large rezoning, because so many folks are just thrilled to get into the K-8. So I understand your desire to be in one. They're a very popular option with families. All right, board members, I don't have any other public testimony and nobody else queued up to speak. So we're on Mrs. Robinson's motion to adopt option 3 that was advertised and presented. Is there any further debate or discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Show the motion adopted unanimously. And for our blue shirt friends, you're not offending us at all either if you go home tonight now, and thank you for coming. Thank you all for your participation. All right. Dr. McGowan.
Thank you. Our next rezoning is a targeted rezoning for the Lakeshore Drive area. Before you is the timeline that we had for this rezoning, which mirrors what you saw for the K-8, but we only had one community meeting for this one. The area that we're talking about is the area shaded in yellow. This is Lakeshore Drive. The area in the hash mark to the left of that represents 2 neighborhoods. To the north, that's Beverly Shores, and to the south part, you'll see Rose Isle. We also have, if you are the area that says Sioux Avenue, that neighborhood is known as Merritt Park, and to the north, that's Sevilla. This recommendation is to move the area in yellow from Winter Park High School to Edgewater High School. This is part of what we've gone through over the last several years of, in our eyes, reunifying neighborhoods. Lakeshore Drive is the only part of Beverly Shores and Rose Isle that is not part of the Edgewater zone. There are 64 homes on this street, and there are 6 students that would be involved at this time with this rezoning. We have received a petition from all 64, signed by all 64 homeowners against this rezoning. This is the map and shows you the area circled in the red. And that's our presentation for this one. We are recommending to move the students from Winter Park to Edgewater. Dr. Jenkins.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jenkins. We do have a number of speakers. Okay, a number of speakers who have signed up to speak on this targeted rezoning. Let me announce the order that I will call you up here in, and many of you have spoken before us before. You know the drill. If you could start with your name and your address. We'll start with Mr. John Boudet, and then followed by Ken Clayton, and then John Kingman Keating, and then Doug Petro, Craig Clayton, Lisa Keating, William Hurt, and Brad Saxton, and then That's it on this one. So let's start with Mr. Boudet. Mr. Boudet?
Thank you, Mr.
Already beat me
Chairman.
to the podium, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't have a prop as cute as Miles, so bear with me. I do have 4 sons that have gone through the public school system, 2 that graduated in the last 2 years from Winter Park High, and a third who's a senior at Winter Park High. And there in the orange shirt is my 7th grader, Ben, who's at Glenridge. We were told as we walked in that we weren't allowed to put up signs, but he made a sign, and I'll tell you what it says. It says, my brother was a wildcat, my other brother was a wildcat, my other brother was a wildcat, and I want to be a wildcat. This street has deep roots into Winter Park High School. Mr. Clayton will tell you that he grew up in that area and attended Winter Park High School from that area 50 years ago. There was a time in the 70s when through desegregation orders, the line moved back and forth between Winter Park and Edgewater, but it's been settled for some 30-something years as Winter Park. We lived a couple blocks away and moved to that street precisely because it was zoned for Winter Park. All the houses around that lake are zoned currently for Winter Park. Proposal is to take a little chunk from that lake and cut it out for Edgewater. You've heard, one other reference to my son. As we walked in, he said, couldn't they just ask the people who are going to be affected and ask them where they'd rather go? And I didn't have a really great answer for that. You've got 64 homeowners who are happy with their choice. We don't have any crowding problem. We have a solution in search of a problem. We would like to stay where we are. We think it's important for families like ours to attend the public schools, and these families have choices, as you know. We've got Lake Highland down the street, we've got Bishop Moore down the street, we've got lots of good choices, and we like where we are. My last thing is this. One of the reasons that people stay away from the public schools is their perception that they have no control. If the legislature says we're going to do FCAT, you're in the public schools, you're going to do FCAT. If they say Common Core, you're going to do Common Core, whatever it is. If you're not happy with the parking at Lake Highland, you can go in and scream and say, I pay for this tuition and we've got to change the parking lot. But you don't have that in public school. I can't think of a better example of having absolutely no control than this situation. 64 homeowners perfectly happy with what their situation, no crowding problem, no nothing. And someone decides, you know what, we're going to move this line. And the argument in favor of moving that line is moving that line. It's not that the school will be better balanced. It's not that the families will be better served. There's no public policy reason other than we'd prefer the line to be here. So I'd ask for your consideration to oppose this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boudet. Our next speaker is Mr. Ken Clayton. Mr. Clayton, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, board members. My name is Ken Clayton. I live at 2800 Lakeshore Drive. Before that, I lived at 2410 Lakeshore Drive. Before that, I lived growing up on Shrewsbury, about 6 houses away from where I live now. And I've attended Winter Park High back in 1963 through 66. My family members got moved around a little bit during the time period when there was the issues with the court. But since then, it has been a stabilized, consistent Winter Park High district. I have 3 children, all 3 of whom went to Winter Park High School. We have had a significant long heritage that has been very important to us, and that's one reason why we have stayed in that neighborhood, so that we could have that consistency. We also had Glenridge, but we have understood and accept the K-8 decision. That's a good one. No problem, no disagreement. But this one doesn't seem to make sense. It is not compelling. It is going to disrupt a lot of lives. It's going to disrupt families who have a history and an allegiance to a school that they have both children and parents have had attendance at. My wife was involved in the task force. She headed it up that started the 9th grade center at Winter Park High. I was involved in the foundation at Winter Park High. I was chairman of that. We have cared about what is going on over there and have consistently supported it, and would very much like the opportunity to continue what has been going on. There has not been anything that will be gained by making the change. There will be a lot of disharmony and a lot of disappointment. And for that reason, we strongly would hope that you would keep things the way they are and not make the change that's unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clayton. Our next speaker is John Keating. Mr. Keating?
Good evening. John Keating, 2550 Lakeshore Drive, Orlando 32803. I'm not going to take a lot of time. I agree with everything that John said and everything that Ken said. I think they're compelling arguments for leaving the status quo as it is. I think that any benefit gained from unifying this neighborhood on the Edgewater side pales in comparison to the disruption that will occur to all the families who for 30 some odd years have planned on going to Winter Park and that side. So I think that's the main focus as I see it. There's no compelling reason for this change. Nobody on the Edgewater side of the line in our neighborhood was clamoring for it. Nobody on the Winter Park side of our line was clamoring for it. It's been forced upon us. And there's, again, no compelling reason for the change. So I would urge you to vote against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keating. Our next speaker is Doug Petco. Did I say it right, Mr. Petco?
Petro.
I thought it was Petro. It looked like
you got
a
it right
C,
the last meeting.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
Go with your
Sorry
gut.
about that.
Doug Petro, 2410 Lakeshore Drive. And my son Asher is a junior at Winter Park High School, and I don't want to take a lot of time just repeating what's been said, but I think it's important to be on the record in support of what my neighbors have said and voicing our neighborhoods, our section of our larger neighborhoods' unanimous opposition to this proposed rezoning change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Petro. Next is Craig Clayton. Mr. Clayton, welcome.
Hey there, I'm Craig Clayton. I'm at 3200 Lakeshore Drive, and for the most part I do totally agree with Mr. Bidet on his comments and everything, so I'm not going to take much time, but I am the one that was moved around, lived in this neighborhood all my life, lived in this home the last 28 years, and I was moved twice during my tenure in high school, and you know, I'm asking, please don't do this again. You know, my time in the neighborhood has been there except for my tenure up at University of Florida. So, you know, my dedication is to the neighborhood. My allegiance is to Winter Park High School. I'm attending. I got the notice on the 35th year anniversary. I think I got the right year, but so I do ask, please don't disrupt this neighborhood again. There's no balancing of people. You aren't going to solve balancing the entire school system of students by doing this. This is just simply disruptive and against the wishes of every single person in the neighborhood. Thank you.
I should warn you all, we're not all Gators up here. Present company accepted. Next we have Lisa Keating. Ms. Keating? Okay, thank you. Next, we have Mr. William Hurt, Jr. Benj, good to see you. Mr. Hurt?
Hi, William Hurt, 2652 Lakeshore Drive. I'm also known as Benj to some people.
I have a son in the 8th grade at Glen Ridge, looking forward to going to Winter Park. I actually have been, I don't have the history that some of my neighbors have, but I'm born and raised in Orlando. My whole family is Orange County public school educated. I'm familiar with just change in general and neighborhoods in general and strong neighborhoods, and that's what we have here. And I believe that change just for the sake of change, when we don't see the benefit or the question hasn't been answered and the overcrowding issue is not an issue, just leave well enough alone and you know, kind of keep things as they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hurt. Our next speaker is Brad Saxon. Mr. Saxon, welcome. All right. Thank you, Brad. Thank you. Oh, did he say Seminole perspective?
Yes, he got you.
Okay. You were doing well there, Brad, but we'll hope Denise is a Gator. I doubt she is. Okay. Are you? Is Denise a Gator?
No, she's not. She is a Seminole.
Okay, wow. You're batting 0 for 2 here. Okay. Any other speakers on this topic before we go to board comment? Okay. Mrs. Robinson.
Okay. Bear with me. I'm going to have some information. Okay, I'm going to start out giving you guys an idea. Welcome, Christine. Giving you guys an idea of where this came from. Why are we here today? This issue came to my attention when I was first campaigning in the neighborhood in 2007 and then again in 2011. After I heard it again in 2011, when I was on a street that wasn't zoned for Winter Park, I had multiple people say, how come in my neighborhood one street goes to Winter Park and everyone else goes to Edgewater? And I said, I don't think that's right. And they said, yeah. And I said, well, what street? And they said, Lakeshore Drive. And I said, no. When I was at Edgewater, my husband and his sister and my high school boyfriend, they all lived on Lakeshore Drive and went to Edgewater High School. So, I'll check that out. So I did. I started in 2011 researching and trying to determine what was going on. So in 2012, when I brought this the first time as a targeted rezoning, the neighborhood, of course, just like now, was not pleased. And I agreed at that time to pull it because and told them I would bring it back with the K-8 rezoning because it made sense when you're rezoning your whole neighborhood for the K-8 so they no longer have to attend Lee Middle School as their zoned middle school. Then they would also, I would look at Lakeshore Drive again. And I adamantly believe in putting the neighborhood all back together in one location, K through 8. So what I want to do tonight is to share with you what I discovered in my research and in my investigations about the school zones for Beverly Shores and Rose Isle. So let me pass out a little information. I don't know how many of these maps were made, so I'll pass down just board members. Uh-oh. Should be, yeah. They're all the same. So the map you're looking at is the map that Ms. McGowan, Dr. McGowan had up on the screen earlier that shows the line there. And actually, it's interesting, it's not just Lakeshore Drive. It's also half of Shoreham Road, which if you look down at the bottom of the pink area where it says Rose Isle, and see that blue line that runs pretty much north-south there, that is the dead center of Shoreham Road. And so the people on the east side of Shoreham that live on the same street are zoned for Winter Park, and the people on the left side of Shoreham are zoned for Edgewater. Then it goes down and it divides, if you, yes. And then when you go down, just follow that straight down till you see Lakeshore Drive, you hit it. Then the line goes south into the lake there. That's cutting 2 houses on Lakeshore Drive. One's going to be at Winter Park and one's going to be at Edgewater, and then it wraps around from there. And so when I was looking at this, because it is, and I just want to let you know that the entire community isn't just the lake. The entire community, this Beverly Shores and Rose Isle, is one big neighborhood that you can only get to from, see where 1792 is over here? Says North Mills down there in that green section. That is 1792. You have to enter the neighborhood, all of these streets up here, Nottingham and Chichester and Ayrshire, Munster, Dorchester, all of those. You have to enter those, and you have to enter Lakeshore Drive down here from 1792. You can't, the only place in this whole area that you can leave the community is back out of 1792, or if you look at that area I was showing you down here at the bottom, the pink, there is a canal that runs from the Lake Sioux to Lake Rowena, right beneath it, and that canal has a bridge, and that's the only way you can exit, and you would cross that bridge and go to Merritt Park. So anyway, so that does show you that is, everything shaded is an entire community, all one community. So let me keep moving. I have more things to distribute. I think there's enough to pass down. If you need more, I have them. Yeah, I've got plenty. They pass it down. Everybody should have one. So everybody has it. So I want to share with you this timeline. Oh, you need one here, Bill. I've got it right here. Oh, it is mine. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, pass one down to Deborah. So this first thing you're looking at is Lakeshore Drive / Shoreham Road timeline. In 1971, originally staff told me that it was 1969 when the current Winter Park main campus opened. But after doing research that I asked them to do, and it was pretty amazing. They went through the vaults. They've done all kinds of great things. They realized that it started being built in 69, but it didn't actually open to students till fall of 71. So that was when the current Winter Park main campus opened. And then the original campus, which is currently the 9th grade center, became Winter Park Junior High. At that time, in that rezoning, all of Rose Isle and Beverly Shores, that neighborhood that we just discussed, was including Lakeshore Drive and Shoreham Road, were all zoned for Edgewater High School. The entire neighborhood attended Edgewater High School. And I personally know 13 Edgewater High School graduates that lived on Lakeshore Drive, this portion that we're talking about here, in the north portion that's not attached to Shoreham, that went to Edgewater and graduated from Edgewater from 1971 to 1987. They lived on that street, including my husband. Like I said, my husband lived on Lakeshore Drive. In fact, he lived in Mr. Boudet's house. And he graduated from Edgewater High School, and his sister graduated from Edgewater High School. So they were zoned for Edgewater, the whole neighborhood. Interesting, in 1972, OCPS was forced by federal government to desegregate. We had had to integrate, and they had to draw up some new lines and try and equal things out. But at the time, what was very interesting, that same year, we hired an attorney named Bill Rowland. He was the OCPS general counsel from 72 to 1993. He held that position a long time. He happened to live on the east side of Shoreham Road, the side of Shoreham Road that miraculously appeared to get zoned to Winter Park sometime between 1972 and 76. We don't have the exact date of that, but the way we know it did is because then his children attended Winter Park High School from 76 to 93. What he did is he took Shoreham, half of Shoreham, so go back to your map, where you see the blue lines, half of Shoreham. He took half of Shoreham, and then he took the neighbors right behind him on Lakeshore Drive and on the lake there. He didn't take from Rose Isle, you know where the circle is. There's a circle. See how the line goes out there towards the lake in that big area? That's the circle. He didn't take those families all the way north up on Lakeshore Drive. He just took literally 20 homes near him. He didn't even take the people across the street from him. And he did that because in 1972, when the deseg order came down and we had to integrate, that's when all the private schools started opening. Lake Highland started opening, Trinity Prep started opening. All those schools opened in 1972 because families with money did not want to go to school with black children because they were being forced to. You know what?
Hey, folks. I'm sorry, but please no outbursts from the audience.
So
Thank you.
anyway, Mr. Rowland used his leverage as the school board attorney to rezone that tiny little area of approximately 20 homes from Edgewater to Winter Park. So there's where some of the speakers are talking about it went from one thing to the other. Just a little segment did. Mr. Rowland, like I said, had 4 children who attended and graduated Winter Park High School from 76 to 93. Then, fast forward to 1987, the school system, OCPS, changed their structure. That's when they went from K to 5 for elementary, 6 to 8 for middle school, and 9 to 12 for high school. And when they did that, they had to do this. The impact on some of the schools was such that they had to do some rezonings because they were putting 9th graders into some campuses and kindergartners in. So it became time to rezone. So that's what happened in this situation. At that time, Winter Park Junior High converted to the Winter Park 9th grade center to handle all of the students that Winter Park had on their main campus. It was overcrowded, and they kept it as a 9th grade center. So all the students from the Winter Park High School 9th grade center had to be rezoned. So it was a middle school and a high school rezoning that happened in that area. At that time, the staff recommended leaving the Edgewater and Winter Park zone lines as they had been with the 20 homes, that little area, zoned to Winter Park. And at the time of that rezoning, I have all the biracial information, committee information. Winter Park High was 95% white and 5% black. Edgewater was 75% white and 25% black. The biracial committee, which was made up of Ormond Pavers, Willie Williams, Lynn Bounds, Henry Adams, and Reverend Joe Hargret, saw this whole proposal the day of the public hearing for this rezoning, and they approved it as it was submitted to leave it all like it was. So fast forward to your next ones, the 1987 rezoning public hearing findings. So that later that night, when they had the public hearings, and they did them different than we do now. You know, we have all the steps and we have all the community meetings and stuff like that. And that was before we got into trouble, I guess, somewhere along the line. Somebody got in trouble and we had to devise those 12 steps. And the meetings from that minute were very interesting. They didn't have the sophisticated software that we have that show maps and have lines and show, it wasn't that sophisticated. It was things like, go south, turn left on such and such, turn right on, is all written out, legal descriptions. So at that time, that night, the staff had made this recommendation to leave everything there as was. But there were 3 members from the neighborhood who came to speak. One of them lived on Shoreham, across the street from Attorney Rowland, and she was suggesting that she didn't like the fact that she was on one side of the street and the other side of the street was going to different schools. There was a woman on the very north end of Lakeshore Drive, very north end, where it runs into Nottingham up at the top of the community, that was upset that some of her friends on the bottom half of the lake were zoned for Winter Park. And then there was a woman that was way down south there, same thing, 2505, on that portion of the lake that was zoned for Winter Park, representing Winter Park. From the table, a board member proposed an amendment to have Edgewater's line moved eastward to the middle of Lake Sioux to match the Fern Creek and what had just been approved, the Lee Middle School zone. So the Fern Creek zone went all the way to the middle of Lake Sioux, and Fern Creek, then Lee Middle School, they had just approved it earlier that same night, went to the middle too, it followed the Fern Creek line. So they asked to have it moved eastward and travel southward to the Canal Bridge separating Rose Island Merritt Park so that all the students in Rose Island Beverly Shores would attend Edgewater High School. There was a second to the motion, and after very much lengthy discussion, the motion failed 6-1. And after that, another board member asked for a recess for staff, and he said, I want to research some legal descriptions with the attorney for an amendment I want to propose, so they recessed. And then when they came back from the recess, the board member proposed an amendment to have Shoreham Road and the west side of Lakeshore Drive behind Shoreham Road to be rezoned from Winter Park to Edgewater. He was trying to get Mr. Rowland and Mr. Rowland's backdoor neighbors that aren't on the lake sent back to Edgewater. And that motion passed unanimously. And then he proposed an amendment to have Lakeshore Drive actually on the northern portion of the lake that was above the piece of that Mr. Rowland had gotten in there, zoned for Winter Park, to be rezoned from Edgewater to Winter Park. And that motion, so that's where, in 1987, the line to take all of Lakeshore Drive came in. Well, you ask, because they voted unanimously to put Shoreham and the other thing back in there, you ask why that is. Because then they had some discussions about aligning the middle schools to the new high school zones. So one board member said, let's just make all middle school zones match all high school zones. Well, there was no one even seconded the motion. It died because they knew that would mean that if that was the case, it was too much to move with. So that other board member came back, the same person who moved to have it all done originally, and seconded to have just the Lee Middle School zone aligned to Edgewater and the Glen Ridge Middle Zone aligned at Winter Park, so that Lakeshore Drive that he had just asked to be put in there would go to Winter Park. At that point, in all of these minutes, and I read all of these minutes, every single motion and second, they stated whether it passed or failed. This one has no statement. It did have a second, but it doesn't say whether the motion passed or failed. All it says, in parentheses, per the school board's attorney, correct legal descriptions would be drawn up by the staff and published. Our staff, looking through all of this, could find no descriptions or published information, but somehow Shoreham Road and the non-Lakeshore Drive piece were still zoned for Winter Park High School, even though the board unanimously approved rezoning them to Edgewater High School. So I'm just pointing all of that out. Just pointing all of that out so that you see that it was political wrangling going on back in the time when this happened in 1987. And, you know, I've heard rumors or conversations with people saying, oh, it was because of crew, the crew team, this. Well, the crew team does not practice on Lake Sioux, did not practice on Lake Sioux. So, and if you really did want to go with the theory of, well, we're on the lake, therefore we only associate with the people on the other side of the lake, so we should be able to stay there, then why is Shoreham and the other homes on Lakeshore Drive included in this? It's just a little interesting and fishy, and I just think at this point, since we've gained unitary status and we worked so hard to get out from under the desegregation order, and we're working so hard to have a different feel with our rezonings and being upfront and above board and doing things where we would never today, never in our rezonings, we would never take a neighborhood and carve one street out and put it in another zone. So tonight, I ask you all, as my board members, my fellow board members, to support me on this targeted rezoning in my district. I firmly believe that it's the right thing to do to put this neighborhood back together, all attending the same school zones, kindergarten through 12th grade. Now that the community will be supporting the K-8 and in the OCPS family, I believe they will continue on as a neighborhood to Edgewater. I've seen this happen with the western side of Maitland community. The west community of Maitland is split between Edgewater and Winter Park, and for years, the western side of 1792 did not attend Edgewater. They did early on, but then they did a similar split where they wouldn't go. They're now all coming back to Edgewater. It's begun that trend again. And Edgewater is currently the second smallest school in Orange County Public Schools with only 1,900 students. So we have 500 extra seats at Edgewater to fill. I believe that having the complete Rose Isle Beverly Shores community zone for the same schools, K through 12, will eventually increase the student enrollment population at Edgewater. And I want to point out one more thing that I forgot. After they did the rezoning and put the Lakeshore Drive in and let Shoreham people, the numbers at Edgewater didn't change the demographics, but it did make Winter Park's demographics go up to 96% white, so it increased, and 4% black. And I also just want to say that I really believe having neighborhoods with obvious boundaries, attending the same schools is the right thing to do, and how we create school zones today is that way. And I ask you to support me tonight on this targeted rezoning. I move that we approve this targeted rezoning.
All right, it's been moved by Mrs. Robinson that we approve this targeted rezoning. Is there a second? All right, it's been seconded by Ms. Flynn. All right, board members, debate, discussion. All right, well, I'll speak up. I'm not going to belabor this, and I think it's important that the audience know. I think by this point, we've all pretty much know how we're going to vote on this issue. We haven't shared it with each other because of the sunshine requirements, but I think we all know how we're going to vote on it. But I feel like something needs to be said in opposition. Belvin Perry, who was our chief judge for a long time, used to have a saying I always loved, and he used to say, put the sidewalk where the people walk. And, you know, in this situation, I think the sidewalk is where the people walk. We have an entire area that's very, very happy with their public school. By all accounts, many of those folks send their children to public school, send their children to Winter Park High School. It was pointed out to me the other day the Winter Park 9th grade center is only about a mile from this area. I understand the logic of what Vice Chair Robinson is proposing. I think the logic is very sound, and I do want to say for everybody out there who's in opposition to this, I truly believe, and she doesn't need to hear this from me, but I truly believe she's doing this for all the right reasons. Her heart's in the right place. Sometimes people who have a lot of respect for each other just respectfully disagree, and I have a lot of respect for Mrs. Robinson, but I have shared with her that at the last meeting that I could support this if it was a targeted rezoning like other board members have done that was very strategic to relieve overcrowding at a school. But other than logical purity and having a neighborhood all within one school zone, there's really no reason to do this, notwithstanding the historical antecedents to how we got to this point. So to me, an imperative is always to keep folks in our public schools. I want to keep these folks in our public schools. I think it's healthy for our system. So for that reason, I cannot support the motion. Ms. Flynn.
Thank you. I did have a question, though, based on the comment of the entrance and exit to that area. Since both of these zones, I understand, have busing, what does that mean for the efficiency of our bus routes? So I just had that as a question either to the superintendent. So I questioned that. You know, we have looked at cleaning up zones before without groups coming to us. I think I expressed this once before. I expressed it in my meeting and stuff. You know, it does concern me that there is a line going right down the middle of two homes. So that seems a bit contrived to me. But I do wonder about what the bus, of course, we've only got 6 students going there right now, but busing for this area might not be the most efficient process for us.
Dr. McGowan or Dr. Jenkins? Dr. McGowan?
Thank you. This area is eligible for busing for the ones who are at Edgewater are eligible to receive a bus to Edgewater. The area zoned for Winter Park. For the main campus, they are also eligible for a bus to that campus. At this time, the folks who live and have their children going to Winter Park are not taking part of the resources of taking a bus to Winter Park High School. But if we did have a bus going to that area, it would be at the Wilkerson and Middlesex Road intersection in the neighborhood. We do have bus come into the area for the Edgewater students at this point in time. So if the folks in the yellow area wanted to have busing, we'd have 2 buses going to 2 schools.
All right, Mrs. Gordon.
Well, number one, I do not agree with all the dates on the timeline, and if the dates or they are partially corrected but not totally. I was involved in the desegregation order. But then there was the busing order, court order busing. And I think some people are getting that totally mixed up. Edgewater was not named in the desegregation order, and I want to make that clear. Another thing I would like to make clear to the public is that when we make a statement that we did not want to go with black children, I think that's unfair to that particular neighborhood when most of the neighborhoods didn't want to go. And just to call out, and I don't think the idea of not wanting to go, but I think you've had to been living back there during that time. Times have changed, but it's still not where it ought to be. But thank God we're not where we used to be. Had we been where we used to be, Katie Adams would have never sat in the seat on the end, and I would have never been able to move to the right or the left of the chairman of the school board had things not changed. We try to change for the good, and when we brought through the board with the help of our former counsel, and I have to mention with Ralph Umstead, which disturbed me much because I was involved in it and I shared with Darrell. I was sent to Inglewood Elementary. And the people at Inglewood loved me very, very much. And as I shared with one of our former superintendents last evening at Wekiver, I said to him, they asked me to leave. They were building Rolling Hills, and Mr. Reeves was the principal of Inglewood, and Carl Reeves asked me to go with him. And he was white. He was white. But he asked 3 black teachers to go with him over the Rolling Hills. He did a magnificent job. I don't think that any of us should point out the negativity of what happened back in the days. I think it's how we look at what we do for people's lives in the future. And that is what bothers me. No one on this board, this is about the best board that I've worked with in a very long time. I had excellent board members that I worked with, but this is the first time that I've had to sit as the African American on this board. And being black, working with a totally all-white board, it's not easy because I don't always see things their way and they don't see it my way. But I'm learning and my colleagues are learning me. One thing I would like to say, I try to listen, I try to look at what people bring before the board, and what they bring before the board is so important. I asked my colleague, Ms. Robinson, when we could speak about it. I said, will you just give me one major reason why you want this to happen? And then she made the statement, she said, well, I just want it that way. Well, there were things that I wanted in the African American community, which is the center of Orlando, that we could not get. But we waited, and now it's our time. We have over 13, 14 or more schools, thanks to the taxpayers, you in the audience, and those that voted for the passing of that we are able to be where we want to be, regardless. But then somebody said, well, you are desegregating the community again. I don't care how much you try. You cannot take pepper and mix it with salt, because the pepper will stand out and it's not enough pepper to go around to mix with the salt. Now, Orange County is changing because it's not going to be enough salt nor pepper to mix with the Hispanic that's coming in, because that's how we're totally going that way. And I think we need to stop looking at what used to be doing the desegregation or what used to be doing unitary status and take a look at what's going to give us the quality of life. I'm a fighter. I'm not an advocate of bad charter schools, but I will advocate for good charter schools with the Orange County name on it because they call it public. but I definitely let them know they have their own board. So I would not want people in my community to go to the charter schools other than by choice, and that's why we have a choice department. But I don't want to lose them to that because of zoning. And this is what's happening in something, or because of curriculum, or because of personnel. Now, I've met, I tossed and turned all last night. I met with Carol again for an hour today, another hour and a half with her staff. I met with your community, Ms. Robinson, that's very, very concerned. But I still can't justify, even because we do it, but do we want to really do this to be doing it? Because we're not going to gain those kids. I can give you that from experience. They will not go to Edgewater. I'm just going to tell it like it is. See, because I know what happened to my community. My neighbor in the front of me was the drum major for Edgewater High School. And I lived on 936 St. George Street at that time. The person on the right of me went to Boone High, and they were topping the choir. The person on the left of me went to Dr. Phillips. And my 3 little children, and 10 years apart roughly, went to Jones High. 25 kids in the band marching with Chief Wilson. Okay? The whites didn't come, and the blacks went where they wanted to go, Edgewater. So I lost all my kids to your district. You understand? I lost all my kids to Pam district. You understand? I lost all my kids to Linda Colbert district, and I'm going to use Deborah McGill's husband. Reggie McGill lived right around the street from me, and I can do this. Reggie went to Boone. Okay? People are going to go where they want to go. I have to look at, this group is very supportive of one of our public schools. They're not against our public schools. They're not against that school that they have been there supporting. Then they made a statement about consistency with the Winter Park District. They made a statement that touched me about policy. They made a statement about significance and long heritage and making the change. Is it really, really necessary? If you can answer that for Ms. Robinson, is it really, really necessary to make that change? After speaking with your community, those that were interested, and asked us to meet with them, they said that families had planned for years. I just moved into the Oak Ridge area, and my kids, if I have any more babies, which I don't think I will be having any, okay, but I may have to take care of my 6 grandkids. And in the house that I live, I'm a Jones High Tiger, okay, because of my kids. But because of where I live, I gotta go to Oak Ridge, living off of Holden. So is that what we are all about when it comes to a small group like this that really is not an impact into what we majorly do in our policy? I have to look at that. And then I welcome that if they could show us. And like they said, it's not about leaving well enough alone, as Mr. Hurt stated. It's not about leaving well enough alone. It's about, is this community going to really be there to help our public schools? And from what I heard in the meetings, they said yes. But what hurt me more, if we do this tonight, I believe we've lost them. And I'm not sure about that. So if you would like to comment to help me get through this, I would appreciate it, because as of this moment, it is very difficult to really support it as it stands, and just not hearing enough strong points of why we should do it, because the desegregation order had nothing to do with it. Okay, absolutely nothing. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members,
All
for
right.
hearing me out.
Thank you, Mrs. Gordon. By the way, you're not the only one alone up here. Should try being the only man up here. You have no idea. I share your pain. Ms. Colbert.
I really appreciate the discourse amongst the board members, and I want to say to this community the same that I said to our friends in the blue shirts, the 32806 community, that I very much appreciate you participating in the process. And I will tell you that I have been deeply, deeply conflicted on this one. I have only had one call from the community, and that caller made a very compelling argument to me. And I very much am on the side of listening to people and what they want. We have bent over backwards during this very painful rezoning process that has involved, 2,500 plus students. In my community, we worked very, very hard to bring all of the families from private school back to our public school. We did that as a community. We did it together. In my community 15 years ago, almost no one went to our public school. Now, people are knocking down doors, and as we heard tonight, lying about where they live to get into that public school. And I do think that says a lot about the quality of our public schools. When I look at these two schools, it's not like, I don't think you're zoning from one highly desirable to a highly undesirable school. I don't think that's what it is. I think you can get a good quality education at either school. And I will say that when I am deeply conflicted about these things, I usually try to come down on the side of the children, because I believe that they are my first priority in the decisions that we make. And sometimes that's very difficult. So for me, the priority for me, there are 6 students that attend Winter Park High School. I do want to let you know that I am thinking about them. I am also thinking about all of those siblings because of the continuity that's required. And Dr. McGowan, refresh me on any siblings that they would still be able to be grandfathered in that process, or no?
Yes, ma'am. They could be grandfathered in. We'd work with the families with this situation.
Okay. All right, I think we have some more discussion. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Flynn.
Thank you. Although we haven't said this, I would probably imagine that the rest of Beverly Shores and Rose Isle look at that strip and say, what gives? Why don't we all just go to the same one? So do we have the numbers, to the superintendent, to Dr. McGowan, of the rest of that Beverly Shores and Rose Isle? How many students are there? Because I understand what Mrs. Robinson is Mrs. Robinson is looking after her constituents as well. I know it does, for the ones out in the audience, it doesn't seem that way, but she is trying to, I would imagine, we haven't talked about this, but I would imagine she's trying to balance sentiment in that area. And so if we can get the numbers for that, I wanted to ask Mr. Chair if we could have like a 5-minute recess, because I wanted to ask the superintendent something.
Okay, you want that at this time? Or do you want to try to get
can
an
they
answer
give
to your
us the
question
figures
first?
now for the, or does Mrs.
You're looking for students currently who reside in the Edgewater side of Rose Isle?
Right,
correct?
for those, when she talks
know
about
that?
the neighborhood.
I don't think we've calculated. Do we know that data?
I don't have it with me here. I'd have to pull it on a map.
Can we get it during the recess?
I will try.
Oh, okay. Or do you know, Ms.? Okay.
If she can go over to her office, we should be able to get it during recess.
I know, you've got to click all those things.
Yes, ma'am.
So can we do that? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Nobody has any objection? Let's take a 5-minute recess.
I'd be sitting here trying to get it done.
All right, board members, if I could ask everybody to sort of make your way back. I was, well, people are filtering back in. I was remiss earlier, and you know what? I think he might have left. Dane, are you still here? All right, you know, he's not in uniform tonight, but I like to recognize scouts when they come down, and Dane Donovan is I believe, a Life Scout. Are you Life Scout in Troop 24? And he and his father, Roger, are here tonight, so please, if you could give a round of applause for Dane Donovan. And with that, Dane, you are excused. You can go home and study. Thank you. You've earned this merit badge. Thank you, Dane. All right. We have everybody back? No, are we waiting for Dr. McGowan still? Okay.
So we can go through with everybody else's.
All right. So are you okay with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Let's move on then. Mrs. Robinson.
During the break, I spoke with a friend out in the audience, Barbara Clayton, and she said that she actually went to Winter Park on the main campus, 69 through 71. So staff was right when they originally said it opened in 1969. But somewhere along the line, they got confused and they said 71. They have found in their thing that it was built in 69. So anyway, so I wanted to let you know it did open. The main campus did open in 69, according to Barbara, because she was there. So, and I wanted to address Ms. Gordon's question about why. And you said, help me out with this. The neighborhood, the whole neighborhood that is one neighborhood, you go in and out, same direction. They used to, when it was zoned Fern Creek, Winter Park Junior, and Edgewater High School, they all attended those schools. The whole community, everyone went there. They didn't stop attending the schools till they stopped attending Fern Creek. Unfortunately, when in the 80s, when that Fern Creek zone, and we all know the Fern Creek zone's an interesting looking zone right now, or was before tonight. It used to dip on the western side and picked up the Coalition for the Homeless over there, and it dipped on the eastern side of Colonial over, and Hillcrest is right in the middle, that zone. And some of the families from that neighborhood started, once the private schools started opening in the 70s, and then later on in the 80s, more open, they, and the Coalition opened, they discontinued going to Fern Creek and sending their students there. Well, when they discontinued that, it started a snowball effect of then, well, if you don't go to elementary school in OCPS, I'm going to go private, they're going to go to their private for middle and their private for high. That community, this Beverly Shores Rose Isle, has not significantly supported our public school system in years. Most of them go to private schools. Many different private schools are represented in that neighborhood. You would find way more private school students than you find OCPS students as a whole in that community. Even some of the families that live on this Lakeshore Drive that are zoned for Winter Park that have students, their students went to private school. They still chose not to use OCPS. So to your point that they won't go if we rezone them, they're not going now. They're already choosing to go private. There's only a small handful of them going to Winter Park. And I believe now that we're doing this K-8 rezoning, and they're going to have a fabulous brand new facility that's a K-8 that everyone loves and wants in their neighborhood right down the street at Audubon Park, the younger families that are currently in there that have young children that would be elementary school age, they're so excited about that K-8, they can't stand it. They're so pumped. They're going to start supporting OCPS, and when they start supporting OCPS, they're going to then all continue on to high school together at Edgewater. And it seems to me that now that we're doing this rezoning for the K-8, this is the time to bring the entire neighborhood back together. So this entire neighborhood goes K through 12 together. So for me, it has nothing to do with fixing a wrong, or it's the right time to bring an entire neighborhood that's going to be supporting the K-8 and continue all the way through K-12 together at Edgewater High School. There are some 400-something homes in this whole community, and 64 of them are in this zone. So the largest portion of the community will be going to Edgewater. So that's where I am coming from with this. So I just wanted to explain that to you since you asked. Thank you for listening.
All right, Ms. Gould.
This has been a really tough one for me, and actually, up until this afternoon, I was still right in the middle of the fence. And what has thrown me over one way or another was actually looking at some rezonings that I have coming up in West Orange County. And we're a mixed part of the county. We have a lot of heritage, fifth generation heritage in some cases, in Winter Garden and Ocoee, and in Windermere. And then we have a lot of brand new folk that are coming in, and we were looking at all the new schools coming online and going forward. And when I start to look, and I've lived in that neighborhood now for 15 years, going on 16 years, and when I start to look at natural lines, they were not necessarily lines of heritage and legacy in that area. And I am struggling with what would be a natural line versus the legacy and the heritage. And because of that heritage side and where these multi-generations align their heritage and their family patterns to, I'm not going to be able to support your initiative, Mrs. Robinson. And I do think you're coming at this for the right reason, and if we were just looking at a zoning map, it makes absolutely perfect sense. But when I look at that historical close-knit relationships that have been developed, it's really hard to buck against those kinds of things. And we all kind of pick natural communities, and I think that's a good thing. I think discovering community is one of the best things that we can possibly have. Metro Orlando is our home, but we all have affinity for certain communities that we just love and cherish that make this large fabric of Metro Orlando so special. So with respect to that heritage, 5 years from now, that may change. It may look completely different, and this may be more about homeowners associations and neighborhoods and those kinds of lines. But today, I see the fabric of that heritage, and that's why I will, and I wanted you to know why.
Ms. Cadle.
I'm curious in that I heard that there could be legacy transfers or superintendent transfers or whatever. And I know that the young man here who's in the orange shirt, who's in 7th grade, would that child qualify for a legacy transfer because his siblings had gone to Winter Park High School, even though we had changed that zone?
Thank you. 2017 is when it's proposed for this would occur, and the young man would be entering 9th grade if my math holds correctly. And he would not qualify for a grandfather, but we would work with our families, as we have in many other cases, to help out as we go through. And I do have the answer for the other question if you're ready for that now.
Yes, Board, Ms. Cadle.
That's fine, and then I'll...
Well, let me let Ms. Cadle finish, then we'll call you back up, Ms. McGowan.
I shared with Ms. Robinson back when we first talked about this. I will not be supporting this. I really believe if, in fact, that when the K-8 opens, that these families want to stay together, I think it's a much easier transition for that street to come to us and say, you know what, we really want to go to Edgewater because our children have made all of these relationships. But right now, just to move it because on the map it looks like the right thing to do, I can't support that this evening.
Moore. Well, before I go to Ms. Moore, did you want to give those numbers?
Sure, I'll be happy to. In Beverly Shores and Rose Isle, we have 11 high school students. Out of the 11, 6 attend Edgewater, 3 are on a magnet transfer, and 1 goes to a charter school. 6 out of 11.
And I know it's stating the obvious to this board, but I want the audience to know that that is not a reflection of the number of school-age children in that area. That's a reflection of current OCPS students.
That's correct.
It's always harder for us to develop, we can do it through census data, but it's always harder for us to develop school-age children in an area.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Thank you, Dr. McGowan. Ms. Moore.
This has been a difficult issue for me as well, and I know we've got a lot of little rezoning, that we're looking at, and I think it's going to increase if that bill passes in Tallahassee, in terms of the open boundaries with other counties, and there's going to be a lot more interest, I think, to even out numbers. So I do think at some point we have to figure out a way to get more students at both schools, Edgewater and Winter Park. And so I think that's important. But on the other hand, I think that there should at least be some people who want to go to the change. And so I think it's difficult in a targeted rezoning if they all don't want to go, and one of the schools, the one that we're relieving, is not overcrowded. That's kind of where when I look at my own district, when I have heartburn about moving children, there's got to be a real compelling reason that maybe it's unsafe. There's too many where they are, and they would be better served in the other school, even though I know they're not going to want to go. There has to be that really strong reason for me to do it. So I would support Mrs. Robinson maybe looking at this again down the road after the K-8 opens up, and looking at, I think I agree with your point of trying to keep the neighborhood together. But maybe there's other options. Maybe as that K opens up, it'll go better. Someone said it earlier, that after 4 or 5 years of sitting in a K-8 together, they may all want to stay together at Edgewater. So maybe it's just the timing. It may just be the timing. And I appreciate, we all love Mrs. Robinson so much, and we rarely have issues like this. We actually do we get credit. We've won awards for being high performing because we really actually like each other. And so when we disagree, we try to do it agreeably, but I just can't support you on this one.
Mrs. Gordon.
Well, I don't know. I'm just kidding. We do like each other, okay? There may have been a time, okay? But Joey, I'll leave Joey alone. Joey would always say, never mind, I won't say it. They know that I love them. They know it. They know it. They love me. I love them. Nancy knows that. And she has fought so hard. I do want to say one thing. I like what Mrs. Moore just said, because the board has been speaking with the superintendent in reference to programming and curriculum, and making sure that all of our schools, I think you hit a key point. Children change their mind every day, believe it or not. And as they move forward, they change their friends and their clothing and everything, okay? And it may be that they may tell their parents, my kids are going, all my friends are going here. But I keep saying my neighborhood is so different. We're just so happy to get a school built. Yours is a little different because you see it a little different. My kids just give us a school, and we'll go. And then the idea of having the choice. I love what you said. Ms. Moore, because it might be timing. And I think you heard when you said, about the private school, all of my Michigan group. I have from the roads in Shingle Creek all the way out to Clare Corner, Ocoee, Apopka Road. That's my district. And I surround, Ms. Robinson is on the north side of Evans, and all of my kids on the south side of Evans, which is where they live. one thing that I do want to say, and I hope that this might make Ms. Robinson feel a little bit different. The reason you have to listen to this little portion. You heard Ms. Colbert state about her community. Well, her community, all of those kids that went back and came out of the, I have to say it for the record because it's a part of our record. All of the students that mostly returned in her neighborhood, they live in District 5. Most of them are still in District 5, but they're going to Conway and those schools that Mr. Rhodes, that we all 100% voted to let Mr. Rhodes take a couple of the people that lived in my district, the majority, but they did not want to go to Catalina, and they did not want to go to Memorial, and it's the same situation that is sitting out here today. All of their life, Memorial was predominantly white, Catalina was predominantly white. Mr. Roach asked me for 10 years to please let my people go, and I did not. Okay, and I'm telling you the truth. I had a lot of fun with it, and they did too. And they were telling me, but Kat, we are spending too much money on private school, and this is the reason why we are doing it. And I didn't become offended about it. I listened. And when we sat back down, you heard Mr. Roach, Ms. Robinson gave me high accolades for sitting down and letting that group that you hear Ms. Colbert talks about, but the majority of them lives in my district, okay? But they are not going to the middle school in my district, and they're not going to the elementary, but they're going in that where they're happy. And that's one of the happiest group, and their friends' children came back. So she's kind of like overflowing now. Aren't you overflowing in that area? Yeah, overflowing. But they still get to vote for me in District 5.
And they love you, Mrs. Gordon.
I know they do.
Thank you, Mrs. Gordon. Mrs. Robinson.
Okay, in light of the fact that I'm not seeing support from the board, I would like to withdraw my motion, and I would like to pull this rezoning and have it disappear forever and ever.
Second.
All right, if there's no objection to that, is there any objection to withdrawing our motion and the proposed rezoning? All right, Mr. Rodriguez, I don't think we need anything more than that, do we? All right. Yes, Ms. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, what I was going to say, queuing up, because I was counting the votes. I know you've got a contingency out there that wasn't very happy with you, but I want to say it took a lot of guts and a lot of fortitude to bring this to the board. And if she fought this much for something she believes in, she'll fight like this for you all too. And so I just want to give you, I've been through more rezonings than I want to say, and many of them have been, there are no fun rezonings. You know my saying, there's either bad ones or really, really bad ones. And so I just want to compliment you and commend you for your fortitude in bringing this forward. It was not easy. It was not easy. And, I admire somebody who sticks to their conviction and brings it forward no matter what. So congratulations.
Ms. Colbert.
I would just also like to say, number one, how much I admire Mrs. Robinson, and that I do believe that she did this for all the right reasons and with her community in mind. I also want to point out to the public how much this process works, and that you truly have a board who has listened to you tonight. You honestly had several board members in here tonight who had not made up their minds. And you came out in a very professional manner. You made your case, and your board has listened to you. So thank you for that.
I want to echo that. I said it earlier, Mrs. Robinson, your heart was in the right place for this. And next time I go down in flames on an issue, I hope I get the same kudos that you're getting tonight. Because I joke with people all the time, it's about fighting for what you think is right. So remember that when high school start times comes back up in 3 months, okay? Okay.
Very good, Bill.
It's about fighting the good fight, and we do listen to y'all. And I'm only doing this to tease them because we used to work together. But you don't even have to pay tuition to get us to listen to you. We do listen to y'all. So with that, we're going to move on to the next agenda item. Thank you all for coming down here tonight. Appreciate it. But they're filing out, and I'm feeling incredibly guilty because not only did I forget to recognize the scout till he stayed here for 2 hours, but he was going to do that anyway. And for all I know, she may have stayed anyway, but one of our staffers has stayed late, and she has young children. And I'm sorry, Lauren, someone that we're very fond of. But this chair is not the future side of an Orange County public school, notwithstanding the sign behind my head. But we had this at pre-agenda meetings, a meeting I wanted you all to see, and had asked John Morris and Ms. Roth to bring down the new signs. This is what you will see going up starting next couple weeks. So by the end of January, on all of our properties where we have vacant land that we plan to build a school on in the future. And Ms. Roth, what will be the dimensions of this sign? 4 feet by 8 feet. Okay, so a number of you had asked. Yeah.
What happened to all the pictures?
Well, no, this is actually going on our vacant parcels of property.
Oh, the vacant lot.
To let people
Don't
know,
take our pictures
so no
down.
longer.
No, it took a long time to get up there.
It's not the pictures.
Don't take us
No, but
down.
it's a response to the criticism of, we didn't even know you all own this land, and a number of us said, we really need to get better signage out there telling people a school is coming, even if it sits out there for 8 years, 10 years. So thank you, Ms. Roth.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah, don't take us.
All right. So we are now on the consent agenda. Before I go to the consent agenda and ask for a motion to adopt it, we do have one speaker, Mr. Rodriguez. I have a speaker, Mr. Lathan Wider. Mr. Wider, are you here still, sir? So we're going to move that off to 16. Okay, Mr. Wider. And we're sorry it's taken us so long to get to your matter, sir. All right. With that, any questions or concerns on the consent agenda? And if not, can I have a motion to adopt it?
To adopt it.
It's been moved by Mrs. Gordon and seconded by Ms. Gould that we adopt the consent agenda. Is there any discussion or debate of that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. And with that, a whole bunch of lobbyists breathe a heavy sigh of relief because they can now go home tonight. Government affairs representatives. Thank you all. Okay, we are now on Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of items. You may have noticed Dr. Jar leaving earlier. He was headed to over to one of our high schools where we have 750 teachers in attendance at our leadership fair. And I wanted to make special note of this because earlier when you mentioned wanting to see more diversity among those entering the assistant principal ranks, when Ron Pilgrim mentioned an increase in our Hispanic teachers, that is the pool from which we draw our leadership from. The large majority come from our teacher ranks. So 750 are in attendance tonight at the leadership fair, trying to build our pipeline, make sure those teachers that are ready and teachers that are leaders are better prepared to enter our administrative ranks, because we are entering that realm. Folks that enter drop, there'll be more and more principals heading to retirement that have their 30 years in. We'll have additional teachers as well entering that drop. This is the major graduating class for drop coming up this year, and so we're very pleased with those numbers. I also wanted to mention that tonight we'll have lots of this for you on Thursday when we have part of our work session is around engaging the community and how we can better communicate. But I want to tell you, we've had a test going on during this actual board meeting of live streaming capacity that we have built in. And so And so while it is in test mode, we have been live streaming during this particular board meeting. We've got some interesting things we'll bring to you on Thursday as well about how we might be able to provide more engagement or more I should say virtual engagement, because that seems to be where our community and generations want to engage now. But one of them we've actually been test driving during this meeting, that is our live streaming. Hopefully it will go permanent at our first board meeting in January. We are also going to be able to live stream our work sessions as well. So folks who don't want to actually come out but want to remain informed will be able to watch a live stream. It's got a few seconds. Is it a 5-minute delay, Dylan? There's a 10-minute delay just in case they have to edit out something, I suppose, that's inappropriate. But the service has a slight delay, but it is virtually, it's pretty much a live stream. And so we've been piloting it. Dylan's been watching it in the back. It's been going without any glitches. So we're excited about that for our community and for the school board. Know that you wanted that. We've been looking forward to it for some time. So going live again in January at our board meeting. We'll bring you lots more information. I'm almost afraid it's overwhelming when we went through some of the information for the presentation on Thursday night, but it's all good information, great feedback, great ideas for how we can further engage our public. But I have to tell you that the greatest way most of our peers engage their public is virtually in the digital world. And so we're headed in that direction. Bring you more on Thursday.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. You know, I'm going to go ahead and say here, I want to thank Dr. Jenkins for something and Dr. Border for something. Ms. Colbert and I had a tough situation to deal with last week, and I think Dr. Border handled it about as well as he could have. I mean that sincerely, Harold, you did, and I want to thank Dr. Jenkins for moving quickly on the issue. I think that's something that had to be done, and I think the choice that you and Dr. Border have made is a very, very good choice for the situation, so thank you. All right. Reports by attorneys.
Chairman.
Yes.
Chairman, I am so sorry. I neglected one other highlight. I beg your pardon. Daryl Flynn and I had our very first teacher roundtable. Last time we did teacher roundtables, Ms. Flynn went last. So this time she went first for teacher roundtable. About 26 teachers over at Andover Elementary School. And I will tell you what's so refreshing. I shared with board members earlier in an email that I forwarded to you. What is always the case when we do those random samples of teachers, because we have 13,000 teachers, it's really hard to get a good grasp. When we have a random sample, we find it both refreshing and very telling as well. We can almost predict the areas that are still sore spots, but very refreshing in the positive feedback. And Ms. Flynn shared with the group, as she did in her own newsletter to her district, the notoriety, the celebrity status that I believe it was a kindergarten teacher in Polk County who resigned and her resignation letter had gone viral. And Ms. Flynn made a very pointed statement to that group. She said, I wish instead we would make heroes of and highlight those teachers that have stayed, that are committed and still work with our children. Instead of making a viral notion out of a resignation, how about all of our teachers that have remained and are doing the work in classrooms every day? And we got an email from one teacher saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. It was so nice to have you both there, and we know that you care, but it was nice to see you there and how much they appreciated it. We're going to continue those kinds of sessions because I think it helps us keep a good bearing on the temperature and the gauge of 13,000 teachers. Are there issues? Are there similar concerns that we can almost pinpoint that we know will come up? Absolutely. But it's still refreshing to hear so many positives from our teaching ranks that do their job tirelessly on behalf of 200,000 students. That number just is staggering every time I say it, and over 13,000 teachers. And so we'll be scheduling the additional roundtables. They are random selections in each district. We'll be continuing those in the coming days. Looking forward to it.
All right, thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Ms. Flynn.
Thank you. It was a really good session. There was a lot of positive And the teachers felt very free to give comments on where they feel we could improve. And the superintendent was really instrumental in explaining a lot of information, some that they are not aware of. One of the issues that I wouldn't mind asking the superintendent is if we could have Scott Howitt do a teacher version of his legislative wrap-up that we could send to the principals, to send to the teachers. I think it would be very helpful. Don't you think? Could I take just about 3 minutes of your time and read this letter that a teacher wrote me? We've all heard of the teacher resignation letter. It was a Polk County teacher. She, talked about she didn't like the foundation of education. She didn't like the reforms that were put in place. I mean, it was pretty much things that we hear, things that we think, and it went viral. And so I asked a teacher that I continue to see teach with enthusiasm and passion, and I asked her, why do you still teach? And I'm just going to read her letter. If it's short. It goes, Daryl and I were talking about how sad we are that we have teachers resigning and leaving the profession after years of dedication. It is an extremely tough time to be a teacher. Daryl looked at me and said, why do you keep teaching? And I thought I should share my answer. I continue to teach along with so many others that are my amazing colleagues and teacher friends because I still believe in what I do. I know the power of a great teacher. I know that we can do great things. I know that we can make a difference. I know that the influence we have, the motivation we can inspire, and the passion we can ignite is more important than anything else. It is more important than money, power, or fame. I teach because I have hope that one day we'll get back to the basics in education. I teach because I hope that someone will see that they can trust us to know what is best for these kids. Give us the standards and the guidelines and let us teach. We can do it. And I know we can do great things. So on the days when I ask myself, why do I keep teaching, I can answer, because I make a difference, and that's all that matters. The evaluations, assessments, and rigor are just the buzzwords in education right now. We all need to remember to teach with passion and let our hearts guide us and our minds help us to find the path to reach each child. Every child can be successful in life, but we must remember that they are all unique like the stars above. They will each take their own path in life. No path is greater than the rest. Every star shines brightly, and we need every single star to light the way. So let's allow every child to find their own way to shine, and let's just keep teaching because we have a gift. Please continue to share it. I plan to make sure that I'm doing my part to help our stars shine. And that was Deb Androsky, who's a teacher at Eagle Creek Elementary. And I think that's what we need to continue to bolster with our teachers. We have to let them know that we love them.
That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Mr. Rodriguez. Follow that with a scintillating attorney report.
He's got a great report.
Actually, board members, I do have something that requires a little bit of your attention this evening. As you may recall, a few days ago, back on December 3rd last week, we had a decision right around the holidays or right before the Thanksgiving break that the DRC voted to approve a development plan to allow the construction of a new public charter school in Avalon Park Town Center. This is a school that's going to be constructed on 2.69 acres and would serve about 1,400 students. So, and it's a 6 through 12. This is not to be confused with the K through 8 that's going to be situated on about 6 acres across the street from Avalon Middle, which has yet to be decided by the DRC, and that decision will be forthcoming soon. But in consultation with the superintendent, Mr. Howitt, and our staff, it was clear that this decision by the DRC to at least approve the development plan required us to preserve our rights before I could get to you as a board and get some further definition. And this is an appeal. This is certainly something that will go before the county commission, which means that, some may perceive this as we're once again locking horns with the county commission. But given the presentation we had before you recently about the school siting ordinance issues, given the fact that there seems to be a tremendous inequity in the fact that you're required to buy 9 extra acres for a middle school and pay $1 million or build $1 million road through wetlands on Wedgefield, and yet we have a 2.69 acre parcel that's going to serve 1,400 students. at a minimum, it is our perspective that we should bring this to the attention of the county commission, highlight the issue, and get them to look at it critically, and then explain perhaps to either you or the members of the public why this should be approved. I do think that once the Avalon Middle School, the K-8 that's going to be across from Avalon Middle School, when that one is up for an appeal, I do think that if it gets approved by DRC, that one we do have to go in with a little bit more of a full court press, because that has a direct bearing on us as an adjacent property owner. And so with that one, we're not just preserving our rights, it's the same right preservation we would do if it was a Walmart, if it was a Target, if it was any other big box store that's going in next to our facility, and it's a brand new facility with insufficient parking and the means to address traffic and so forth. So with all that being said, I'm not looking for a vote necessarily unless you are going to call it for a vote, but I just want to get consensus. And if there isn't consensus to move forward with this appeal, then please advise before myself and my office continue down that path. But again, given the consultation with the superintendent, it was our recommendation to preserve the rights of the school board and then go forward with the appeal when it comes up.
Ms. Moore?
Mr. Rodriguez, thank you for your leadership on that. I would support that. My question would be, in terms of a timeline, when would you anticipate that this issue would be seen and heard at a commission meeting?
It will probably be sometime in January, maybe February. They have to schedule it, and I don't know if they're going to wait to try and bring both together. It would be our preference to have this first one heard and disposed of, and at least get a sense of what their rationale is for approving this, and then that gives us some better direction for the next one. But I would expect January, February. No date has been set by Mr. Testerman or anyone else at the county, and given the schedules for the holidays, I would say no earlier than January, but probably sometime in mid to late January, if not February. I'm looking at Ms. Fernandez, and is that about right? That's about the right timeline. So
The reason I ask, I had actually run into a couple of commissioners, and they were seemingly unaware of this situation, and so it just seems to be in opposition to when they were here with us just a mere month ago. That didn't seem to be the sentiment that was expressed. And my concern with the timing is if that is how they feel, and this is going to continue to be a pattern, we do have a remedy with the Charter Review Commission, but the time to put new issues, from my research, I spoke to a member of the commission yesterday, and his recommendation was if we were going to have to bring something, it would have to be towards January. So I'm a little concerned about the timing, and I don't know if you wanted to address that.
Well, any changes in the Charter Review Commission are not going to impact these two applications in any way, shape, or form. I think the issue with the Charter Review Commission, and you and I had some conversations on this before, is, we want to, if you want to take it out of the decision of the county commission and having to put them on the spot to make the determination as to whether the charter schools should be subject to the same rules and so forth, it's a very easy question for the Charter Review Commission to add if they're willing to do so. And of course, Charter Review Commission is an independent citizen body, and we get all that. But I think they're two different. I would not let this be a guide as to whether or not you make a decision on asking that the Charter Review Commission put or not put something on the ballot, because these two applications are going to go in their own path. It's hopeful that maybe the county commission, in reviewing these, will understand what the frustrations are for this board and this community if we're going to allow certain schools and then hold public schools to a different standard. And charter schools are really public schools, you know that. But if they're not going to, I don't think they're going to make a recommendation one way or the other as to whether or not address charter schools in the school siting ordinance. And that decision's going to be made. By the time they make that decision, the county commissions, the charter review ship will have sailed, and you'll have to wait 4 more years.
And I really want to hear what the rest of the board says, but perhaps my thought just at this point was maybe we have to have some sort of discussion about whether this board wants to present in January to the Charter Review Commission. And from what you just said, that is a separate issue. I was thinking in terms, I wouldn't want to aggravate them, before the hearing, but, there was the timing factor, but it wouldn't impact that anyway. And we certainly could withdraw, but you don't have the opportunity for 4 more years. So that's the challenge if we don't. So maybe there, Mr. Chair, you have a suggestion of how we could have that conversation.
I think it's a conversation we certainly need to have. Let me noodle on that. I think probably the best venue might be one of our committees at a time that we could all be there. But I think it's a discussion we probably need to have, especially since the clock is ticking. Dr. Jenkins, did you have was that Mr. Roger? Okay. Ms. Cadle.
I think we need to move forward on challenging that decision. If we don't have the support of the county commission on that after all the time we spent here talking, and the letter that was sent, I think Mr. Howitt's department sent the letter recapping exactly what the commissioner said, and the DRC, it's almost like they ignored it. And so I think the time has come that we need to really find out. And, Mayor Jacobs is the one who has gone to bat on the charter amendment about, cities doing things to harm county citizens when they approved development in the city commission wouldn't listen to the people who didn't live in the city to hear it. And that amendment, or that has passed twice. I mean, there was some concern that it wouldn't pass the second time. So we know education is really important to the citizens of Orange County. And I just, for the life of me, after all we went through to get Wedgefield and the things we had to add and the things we had to do and the dollars that had to be spent, and then to get the approval on West Orange and the millions of dollars that we had to commit to be able to build a high school for children. So you have my wholehearted support to move forward with this.
Ms. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what this allows us to do is continue the discussion on charter schools and the process. The letter that Mrs. Cadle referenced was a very thorough letter that was directed to the DRC and about considerations in regard to traffic, using the data and the methodology that is used for schools versus what was felt was methodology and data that was really not applicable to a public school setting. And so that was included in our letter of appeal, and Mr. Rodriguez can provide more clarity on that. But that is what we're appealing on, is that was what they used for their traffic studies was not consistent with a public school, and that the conditions that they put were questionable. And when I say questionable in how they could be held accountable. And so I think when you read that letter, it was very detailed. And what I look at this is, we shouldn't. I don't think we should view this as a fight, although I think it will be. But it is the technical opportunity for us to continue the dialogue. And, I was told unless it was appealed, it wouldn't go before the Board of County Commissioners. And I think that this is what allows us to have an open conversations with the county commissioner. So I do support it, and I think we should find out what the next steps are and bring our comments to the commissioners.
Ms. Gould?
Where will this discussion and appeal fall in the process of finalizing the language with the school citing ordinance that the staff's working on?
Well, we have a meeting scheduled for early January to once again take stock of what were the areas between Mr. Testerman's office and our office. We've agreed that we know that there's a number of items that there was commonalities, and so that meeting is being scheduled for early January between our two staffs. He is expecting to have a presentation to his board. He's asked that it be a joint presentation between our staff and their staff, which is good because we'll be at the table to be able to, give them our viewpoints, much like they've done here on previous occasions, but it would only be for the county commissioners. So I see that briefing as a positive thing. I believe that's scheduled for the end of January or early February. So that process is ongoing. I think bringing this to the forefront and maybe doing it again when the other application comes through, at a minimum, gets them to again take pause and think and consider, okay, because when I hear that they are not even apprised of this issue, when we just met less than a month ago, and I know that when we sent the letter, we copied the commissioners on purpose because we wanted to make sure they heard it from us as quickly as we sent it to you, sent it all part of the same email. But the feedback I've heard from some of you independently has been that your respective county commissioners were surprised. Why would you do this? And again, it's pretty clear if you're approving a school on 2.69 acres with 1,400 students, but you just made us pay over $1 million to build a road and another $1 million to buy more property to get us to the right acreage. Why? And that why question, I can't give you the answer. Only they can do that. So,
well, and the reason that I ask is that I think this is a gift, actually, to this discussion of the school citing, and really highlights some of those issues that we keep running against when we're trying to do the best we can, not only for our children, but with the tax dollars that we have. And while I'm all for choice, I am for innovative charters being able to act a little more like speedboats than we can. At the same time, I don't think we should be able to sacrifice they should be able to sacrifice some of those elements that are important to character building and building well-rounded children. And if you're putting something on 2.9 acres and you got to have parking and you got to have transportation, I think they're losing out on some things. So, I think the conversation is timely, and I'd be very in favor of us pursuing this appeal.
Ms. Colbert.
My comments are simply that I too support the appeal. I've been deeply disturbed by the inequity of treatment between two sets of public schools, and there is a place for that. But I've said several times at the board table that some of the processes for charters don't allow for public input the way that we do. We take the school citing very, very seriously. And I believe in some way we need to be that voice for the community and step up and say, we wouldn't do it that way. That's not the right way to do it in the best interest of the community. And at this point, the public is not having that voice. And I believe that by doing this in a way, we are being a voice for the community that we serve. So I support moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Colbert. So, Mr. Rodriguez, does the traffic for this parcel affect our middle school? It doesn't.
not as directly, no. I mean, it's in the same vicinity, but it's not anywhere close enough to say that it would impact our start times or anything like that. Ms. Flynn's shaking her head no. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, I just, I'm fine with us moving forward. And forgive me for being obtuse, because you briefed me 2 weeks ago, and my fault for not knowing that area well enough. I thought this was a parcel right across the street from our middle school where they want joint use of our field and all those issues, which I do have a major problem with, because that traffic will affect our school, and there's no way that we can afford to give up our playing fields for another 1,200 students or whatever they want to put there. I just hope that we couch this as we move forward as far as it being inequitable for students, and that we remind the county commission that these are Orange County Public School students. And I think that's an important distinction. I'm sort of looking at the back of the room at Mr. Howitt. I think it's a very important distinction, because I don't think it's a winning argument, and it's not one I would want to make, that, well, we have to do it, they should have to do it too. I just don't think that's an argument we should be making. I think we're going to lose on that, because it just runs contrary to popular belief as to what a charter school is going to be. And, more educated members of the public are going to be, well, what do you mean? We put charter schools in strip malls and shopping centers and wherever. So probably enough said. I just hope we couch it as far as this is not a good educational environment for Orange County Public School students. To have that many students on that small a parcel is not healthy. I think that's the argument we need to make. Ms. Colbert, did you queue back up, or did I? Okay. Anybody else on this, or did we get through here? Ms. Flynn? Ms. Gordon, did you?
No, you didn't call me.
Okay. Because when I talked, I didn't think anybody else was queued up. All right, Mrs. Gordon.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to get, I believe the general counsel is trying to get consensus, and I think I'm trying to hear, I think everybody spoke to it. So I was going to ask if that's all the superintendent needed, if we could move on, since we do have an executive session, and it's almost 9 o'clock, and I know how this team gets at 9. So can we move on with this? If the superintendent say this is all we need, can we please move on, Mr. Chairman? And I've given consensus on it myself.
Sure. Ms. Flynn.
Sorry, I did have one more comment. If you review the letter, it will show that we talk about an adequate size site for a school.
Yeah. And I've seen the letter. I just, in my mind, thought it was that parcel across the street. Yeah. All right. Do you have what you need, Mr. Rodriguez?
Just had the second half of my report, and that was, we did get a very favorable ruling 2 days ago in Wedgefield, or maybe yesterday, I guess it was. And so the petitioners have had their complaint dismissed. You should have received a copy of that, and what it basically said in 20 pages from Judge Kest is that the county was right in making the determination that they made, that we did a great job of presenting the evidence to preserve it, and that, in fact, Wedgefield should have been rezoned the way it should. I think more than anything else, so I think it's a good legal victory for the organization, for our folks that are defending your rights out there, because it, again, empowers you to know that when we are giving you guidance and recommendations, I can't guarantee we'll always be right, but we're trying to make some very good, calculated decisions about how we think the courts are going to rule, and we expect the same when we get some final results in West Orange as well. So just wanted to make sure you had seen that.
Kudos. Good victory. Thank you. All right. Committee reports. Mrs. Gordon, did you want to add anything on Community Action Board?
The only thing I need to say, my report is in the package under 19.01, but I would like to restate to this board, the last time I made the report, the Community Action Board is meeting tomorrow. We will be meeting at 4 o'clock. We've been also meeting in different community centers. So they're going to be coming out in the Apopka area, the Englewood area, the Winter Garden area, and we've been meeting in the new Holden Heights. We've also been meeting, the entire board, with the Holden Heights Redevelopment Committee. That is a committee that this board needs to pay attention to. They are interested in Grand Avenue. So we had a major meeting on last Friday when I came in from on last Thursday night when I came in from Tampa. Very productive. They have done studies. They for the redevelopment of the Holden Heights community. Grand Avenue sits within that Holden Heights, and I would bear you to listen to them if they do come before us. They will be working with the mayor's office, I imagine, but I know that they're working with Commissioner Ings. The mayor did not appear, but Commissioner Ings did appear. They all have ideas of what they want to do, and we are in the process of having our purpose meeting also. So I did want to mention that in the Community Action Board report. Also, the GED. We cannot drop the ball. When the census report came out, it showed the West Side really, really struggling. But the community that is struggling the most is that Holden Heights community. And I will be giving to Ms. McGill a report that you would look at that will just shock you about the number of people. But I brought it in before when the census came about, and it was brought to the Community Action Board. So I think the GED, I don't know if Dr. Jenkins has a report that she could give us at the next board meeting of where we are. The Community Action has set a goal for GED. We have got to help these people in my community, in our community, and our city to become self-sufficient. It is very important. Once they become self-sufficient, they will get a job. The Community Action Board, that part of the government, will help them. But if we're not doing our part, helping them to get the GED, and I would like to see a report come to this board of the number of GEDs that we have acquired outside of the regular classes we have going on within our schools, because I do know a lot of our centers are now picking up the GED, and then I'd like to know how we are connecting with that part of the government, because we did make a commitment, and I think we need an update on that, Madam Superintendent, for the board, so we'll know that we are assisting and doing our part with Orange County government and under the leadership of Mayor Teresa Jacobs to see that our people are educated. I don't like going to meetings and they are the spokesperson for education. I can't stand that. I think that we are the ones that need to be at the table. And we're the ones that, if they said they're going to do 20 this month or with that new test and helping them, we ought to do 40, 50, or 100. But we need to be out there surveying that community and looking at that survey of how many people do not have an education in that community. And we need to educate them, because we can't keep moving the children. So we've got to educate the parents. So that's a big thing of mine right now, and it always has been, and I'm not going to rest until I see that practically everybody in that community who wants an education, and that's the goal I had to write down, that everybody in the Holden Heights or in any of our neighborhoods that want a GED or wants an education will be granted that by the assistance of the Orange County Public Schools.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Gordon. Yeah. All right. I brought up earlier, I'm going to make short work of this. Ms. Gould had sent out, we're now on agenda item 20, policy level issues the board would like to agenda for subsequent meetings or work sessions. And I've since read the superintendent's response. I think a lot of the data is already out there. So, Dr. Jenkins, what would you think if we perhaps scheduled a strategic plan update to go over some of those data points? Ms. Gould, what would you think of that?
I think that would be fabulous. I think, one of the things, and I've brought it up at the table before, is during my table talks and my community meetings, I get a lot of the same question over and over again. And I don't have readily compiled our data or how we compare. And that's really what I want to be able to have for all of us, is to be able to be armed to answer these questions that sometimes don't catch us off guard, but we just don't have that at our fingertips on, what is your turnover rate? How do you compare to other districts? How are we doing against the transitions that the state, the country is facing? We know teacher pipeline, as we heard, is important all the way up to our administrators. And I'm having a lot of conversations even in our high schools and with Valencia and UCF about how do we encourage people to go into teaching. And they want to know these questions. What's that long-term mobility for our students? How do we drive them to match into career pathing? So I think if we could find a way to kind of compile all these independent studies and some of the surveys we've done, and of course the teacher roundtables are absolutely fantastic that we're doing on a regular basis now. I think that will give us and arm us with all of the data that we need to look at this issue.
Well, I agree completely, and you never want to react to an isolated incident, and I'm a big believer in data, but I really recently dealt with a situation along with Ms. Colbert where these kind of issues came up, which is why when I saw your email, I don't know what prompted your email, but just to have at our fingertips, because frankly, I share your exact perspective on this. It's almost from my seat an exercise to arm me with data. And I want to know. So when people say, well, you're having teachers leave this district in droves or principals leave this district in droves, in our meeting the other night, and keep in mind this is a meeting of my school community, and I know a lot of those folks as neighbors and friends, but I said about partway through the meeting, listen, I'll buy you a cup of coffee if I'm wrong about this, but I don't think our principal retirement resignation rates are any different today than they've been for the last 10 years. In fact, I'm 99% sure I'm correct about that, and I need to see that data. And frankly, I'd like to see it broken down by, learning community, and I'd also like to see it for teachers as well, by learning community. And I'd like to see it going back 10 years, I think is just an arbitrary number, but just so I can show people, listen, there's no difference. Teachers are always resigning, and we've always been a profession with a high turnover rate, and when you compare it as well to other districts, I find that persuasive too. The other thing you said in your email, the climate survey, I'm a big survey guy, I think it's a politician in me, and I make no apologies for that. I think because surveys really dispel preconceived notions you may have with objective data. So, but I think we may have done a lot of those with the accreditation process. So Dr. Jenkins, if we can just sort of bottle all this up.
Independent, which is
And what I'd like to ask you to do, and sometimes I do this when we do work sessions, and I feel comfortable saying this to you, won't be reticent, but when I ask Dr. Jenkins to please send staff to you to get exactly what you want, please be prepared, because I'm going to give her an outline of what data I'd like to see. And, she always circulates around and asks all the board members, so if you have an interest in this or this comes up with your communities as well, be prepared to give her information about what specific detailed. And I just, when I got your email, and then I'll shut up and shut this meeting down, but when I got your email, I thought, do we do a work session on this? And I thought, no, you know what, this is really strategic plan update material if Dr. Jenkins agrees with me. And we can come in and it dovetails with our strategic plan anyway in a lot of ways. And I think we all need to have the data at our fingertips.
And one other thing, in the email, it was, the teachers and the principals are what we've been talking about a lot tonight, but I know on our support staffs, we have a lot of competition in a very tough market. We need to know that too for our planning and budgeting purposes as we move forward. So if we're going to capture that data, we need to be looking at that. Those tough positions like bus drivers and custodial services, and I'm not sure how we do it in food and nutrition, but I know in those two line items, it is a tough market when you're in a service-based market. And it's very, very competitive. And we compete because we have great benefits, but we need to know the whole picture. We need to understand it completely.
I'm glad your mind was thinking about this too. Dr. Jenkins.
So I didn't want us to leave tonight without mentioning that Orange County School Board Member Pam Gould of District 4 received the 2015 Star School Board Member of the Year Award. She
She was recognized by the Consortium of Florida Education Foundations for her exemplary leadership at the 70th Annual Joint Conference of FADS and FSBA. Congratulations.
Well,
Very exciting.
and you beat me to the punch. I feel like a really bad parent because I woke up this morning, forgot it was my daughter's birthday. We were rushed to get out of the house. And you're not quite on level with my daughter, no offense, Miss Gould, but I think it's Miss Gould's birthday today, too. It's Thursday. And I didn't get you a cake, and I'm sorry. And I missed Miss Cobert's birthday, so I'm just in a doghouse with every woman I know right now. We will have an especially big cake at our next board meeting, and Miss McGill even reminded me yesterday, and I forgot, so I do apologize. But happy birthday, Miss Cobert. I think yours was 2 weeks ago. And happy soon-to-be birthday, Miss Gould, in 2 days. Yes, Miss Cadle.
Back to the previous conversation, and I won't belabor it, but I had a conversation with a sitting superintendent who used to work here in our district, superintendent of OSA, and we go way back to where he was my son's soccer coach. So, we've kept in touch through the years. And, I was having the conversation with him, and I think the one thing that is changing now that maybe wasn't the way before, if you wanted to go up in leadership, it took a long time to go up in leadership here in Orange County because there were only so many spots. And so he was having this interesting conversation with me that you almost have to leave to get that promotion. And then, maybe you can come back and I think one of the things that we need to look at is when we're looking at this, some of our people who have stayed with us, how long has it taken to get them into leadership? Because that's one of the things that I kept hearing was, I had to leave to be able to get that promotion. And we know that in May, we're going to see more retirements than we've ever seen. And so I think it would be very interesting to kind of look at, do you now have to leave OCPS to get that promotion, or can you stay here and get it? So I was afraid I would forget that.
And just so we're clear, in case anyone's listening to the live streaming, keep in mind the reason throughout the state of Florida that May retirement indicates the folks who entered drop before the financial reward for dropped went down significantly. So lots of folks were forced to make a decision on their retirement, and that 5-year drop period comes up this May. So we know we have a large graduating class who made very sound financial decisions. We don't begrudge them at all, but our HR folks have been on top of that to make sure we are prepared for those teachers especially that are leaving.
Well, and just to be clear, and, board members, I think like a lot of us, I love this part of our board meetings. It's the only time we can really talk on issues that are important. I struggle with, the fact that we're not management. Dr. Jenkins is management, and she has to wear the management hat. But sometimes I think we have to put ourselves in her shoes. And, this is hard when you're out there talking to audiences, but education is undergoing a sea change. And I remember education from my perspective. I'd love to hear it sometime after this meeting or later from folks out there in the audience or Dr. Jenkins. I perceive it went through a similar change around 99, 2000 when FCAT was coming in, and I remember all the hue and cry then. So part of me balances, okay, you know what, this is just transitional time, and it's hard, and it's already quieted down, I think, this year for our teachers. I don't sense near the sense of desperation or anguish or consternation this year from teachers that we had last year. Hopefully we'll last until the legislature socks us with something new. But, for now, I think that's quieted down. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to sort of balance it and look at the numbers and try to see whether we're doing all we can do. But I just have to get this off my chest. Whenever we have these conversations, I think, it's a terrible analogy, I'm probably going to regret saying this, but I don't know a lot of travel agents anymore. And I remember when the internet came in, and I knew a lot of travel agents 20 years ago, and, you know, and I'm not suggesting that's happening to teachers. We'll always need teachers. You know, my profession is going through sea changes. I'm looking at Ms. Kober because she's married to a lawyer. I mean, you know, the practice of law is nothing like it was 10, 15 years ago, and it's only getting worse. And as technology comes along, and, you know, it may be a good thing for society, fewer lawyers, but, you know, Mrs. Robinson, I mean, it's a different world. You know, you used to get out of law school, you had an assistant assigned to you, you had a nice office. Now you're lucky if you have, 50 square feet or, you know, or even that, and you're lucky if you don't share an assistant with 3 other lawyers, if you get one at all, and you do your own typing. And, you know, yeah, and gosh, you know, I had the misfortune of bringing up healthcare reform with a doctor on an 8-hour drive at the beginning of the drive. I didn't say anything else for the next 8 hours. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, you want to talk about professions going through change because of changing expectations and reimbursement. I mean, really, trust me, you don't want to bring up that conversation with the doctor, and he's the nicest man in the world, so there's probably no value to this at all other than I always want to say that, and it's one of those things you just can't say, and it's difficult, but it's just a transitional time. The world's changing, and frankly, the hardest thing for us is when you're out there talking to audiences that are upset is I can't convey to them that if I get in front of any number of a dozen different audiences, whether it's a chamber crowd, a business crowd, or a crowd of people who don't have children in public schools, they're not sympathetic. They're just not. Y'all know what I speak of. I mean, they are not sympathetic at all, you know, and I brought that up the other night, you know, and it's just tough, that dichotomy, because I don't think they always see that. So, Ms. Cobert.
I know we want to get out of here, so I usually try to be brief. I just want to make the point that I agree, Pam, I appreciate you asking for the data. I do believe in research-based decision-making. At the same time, what's so hard about this job is that we're dealing with human beings and their emotions, and that's really hard. But I think the most important message for us to convey to those at OCPS and to the public and all of the employees out there really is that we are listening. I said today, every person in this building cares. Every person in this building is willing to listen. So we welcome that input, and I think we have a culture here that looks for ways to support, and I think we can probably communicate that better, that we are looking for ways to support our staff and our employees. I think that's an important message to get out. And I will convey on that note that I have already gotten compliments from the parents who are here tonight going through this process, how impressed they were at the discourse that took place at this table and how this meeting went. They were very, very impressed. And those parents tonight at least feel heard, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to all of you for that, so thank you.
Mrs. Robinson.
Okay, I just, real quick, while we're all in the same room, the holiday program, I'm going to switch to a totally light note. It's Tuesday, December 15th. Am I correct on that? I think, Dr. Jenkins, it's her holiday, superintendent's holiday celebration. I haven't heard from all of you whether you're coming. Is it, everyone's live? Can you not make it, Kat? Pam, Joey, y'all can come.
Depends on what you have in mind, but.
Well, anyway, I have talked with Scott Evans, and he's going to work with us, and he's willing to let us rehearse Thursday after the work session. Can everybody it'll take 15 minutes. Oh, you can after the work session. Well, Christine, you're you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And so anyway, I'm not going to give any clues away as to what it is, but you don't want to miss. We're going to perform live. So anyway, see y'all in a bit.
All right.
A baby is born. Cute. He's already surrounded by technology. By age 4, she knows how to use a smartphone. He's reading. No, Not from this. She's making a digital presentation. You don't even know what that is. He has an interest. No, not that. That. By middle school, she has built her own website and her first app. In high school,
with my Michelson interferometer, I can measure down to the fraction of the wavelength of light.
wow. The world is changing. And they are preparing for jobs that don't even exist yet.